Jian Wushuang was unsure of the other party's intentions in making such remarks, and dared not respond, only listening awkwardly. "I'll truly envy you inheritors. You possess great potential and formidable strength. Unlike me, burdened with trivial matters all day long," Wuxia exclaimed, almost mistaking tea for wine, as he continued to narrate his difficulties. Jian Wushuang, sitting beside him, shook his head in sympathy. The two of them seemed remarkably alike, facing a series of misfortunes one after another. Wuxia faced continuous setbacks, with his luck only being relatively good when the Elder Palace was just established. However, as time went on, he was burdened with all the dirty and exhausting tasks in the northern region. In the end, he gained little benefit, and his reputation was tarnished. In the Elder Palace, the authority of the Hall of Enforcement couldn't compare to the three palace masters. Their power was only enough to intimidate the local emperors in the northern region. Originally, he had planned to find Jian Wushuang in the Earth Realm. He planned to introduce the Transformation Dao Emperor, Broly, to Jinling, and obtain significant merits. This would facilitate his pursuit of the position of Palace Master. But what happened? Not only did he gain little advantage, but his relationship with Emperor Lu Hua became strained upon returning to the Elder Palace. Consequently, he lacked internal support, and the election had to be postponed. Wuxia was well aware that the position of Palace Master was unique. It couldn't be obtained solely through internal support. He had to bypass the Elder Palace and directly seek Jinling. As long as Jinling spoke, becoming Palace Master would be a sure thing. However, Jinling wasn't easily deceived. He first plotted the passage to the second prison and then sought Jinling together with the Demon Sound Divine General. Originally, Wuxia thought that by exploiting this merit, he could develop the inheritance of the Demon Sound Mountain to the fullest. He could simultaneously cultivate the inheritors, increase the treasures within the Elder Palace, and assist Jinling in solving problems. In any case, he would gain numerous benefits. But in the end, he never expected that, after making the arrangements and winning over Divine General Main and Lord Yunzhong, he would end up with a face full of soot, losing everything. After this series of events, he felt reluctant to ask for anything unless the other party had gathered all the treasures. To compensate Jian Wushuang, he resorted to selling his own value and seeking help from others. Although life on Jian Wushuang's side was not great, he had never lacked in treasures. When compared, Wuxia seemed to have a tougher time. "Lord Wuxia, it seems you are not one of the revived strong ones. There is still a great chance for you to reach the peak in the future," Jian Wushuang advised. However, Wuxia shook his head. It wasn't that easy. Even with the guidance of Qixin, he couldn't break through. He had passed numerous opportunities while heavily injured. If his state of mind wasn't fulfilled, he would have collapsed long ago. Now, he had lost much confidence in the cultivation level of Universe Master. "These are some treasures you need. The essence of the Beast God blood is quite special. I brought it from the Grave God Mountain. Be careful. The power contained within surpasses your imagination." Wuxia carefully handed a mustard seed to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate and directly accepted it, using a bit of thought power to explore its contents. Apart from the vial containing the blood of the beast god, there were 200,000 cubic universe crystals and the essence of all things within a cubic space. With these treasures, Jian Wushuang gained confidence. Now, only the remaining 20% of the universe origin source were left. Originally, he thought Wuxia would play the emotional card to forego that 20% of the universe origin source. Unexpectedly, Wuxia directly handed over the 30% universe origin source. This surprised Jian Wushuang. "Lord Wuxia, we agreed on 20% initially. Why this extra 10%? Jian Wushuang declined. This time he had misjudged Wuxia's intentions. He never expected Wuxia to give him an additional 10% of the universe origin source. Wuxia handed the jade containing the origin source to Jian Wushuang and said firmly, "This is my fault. Consider the extra 10% as compensation. Don't refuse." "Thank you, Lord." Jian Wushuang stood up and bowed. 10% of the universe origin source. This 10% was worth his bow. The exchange of treasures was considered completed, and Jian Wushuang unexpectedly gained something extra, making him quite happy. Originally, he was worried about being too courteous and having the upper hand, but now he felt unrestrained. He ate what he wanted and drank what he pleased. Seeing Jian Wushuang let down his guard, a smile appeared on Wu's face, but deep down, he felt quite distressed. He was not originally wealthy, and the additional 10% of the universe origin source made his situation even worse. Jian Wushuang, from now on, don't address me so formally. I'm easygoing and don't care for such titles. Wu's smiled and said gently. Jian Wushuang was momentarily stunned, feeling that something was not quite right. In the future, if you regard me highly, just call me Big Brother. Wu's said with great enthusiasm. This statement made Jian Wushuang a bit uneasy, and he quickly declined. How can that be? Lord Wu's is a disciple of Qixin. We can't be peers. Leaving aside such formalities, in terms of strength, he was far inferior to Wu's. The latter was a supreme peak powerhouse and even stronger than Bai Junwang. When Wu's had come to rescue him, his mere avatar could rival a supreme peak powerhouse. His true strength was probably comparable to Divine General Mayin. Seeing Jian Wushuang's hesitation, Wu's waved his hand and said tactfully, let's just treat each other as equals, regardless of those titles. Big Brother. Jian Wushuang raised his teacup with a determined expression. Seeing this, Wu's also lifted his teacup, his eyes shining as he responded, Second Brother. The two of them drank merrily. Wu's waved his hand and called, Servant. Immediately, a red-clad female emperor, with the aura of a Tier 5 emperor, appeared and respectfully said, My lord, go. Bring all the fine wines I have stored. Wu's declared with great boldness. The wines he had stored were undoubtedly of considerable value. The two of them exchanged cups and engaged in conversation. This time, Jian Wushuang truly broadened his horizons, gaining a deeper understanding of the ancient era. For instance, the moro-temporal space from ancient times still existed, not having burst into fragments and perished. There were also some matters concerning the Three Kings' Court. The Three Kings' Court was indeed a peak power in its time, once contending with the Qixin Temple. However, later on, the Qixin surpassed them by too much, forcing the Three Kings' Court to withdraw its influence. Fortunately, Qixin did not annihilate them completely, leaving behind some territory for the Three Kings' Court. However, later events, particularly the appearance of a giant egg, led to the destruction of the Three Kings' Court. If it weren't for the fact that the Qixin dispatched someone to suppress Fuego in the end, the Three Kings' Court might have been completely wiped out, without even a trace of legacy. This time, with the opening in the Qixin Temple, the inheritance of the Three Kings found its rightful place. Jian Wushuang couldn't be certain about the Soul Dao origin source, but he was certain that the Dao of transformation had fallen into Broly's hands. The inheritance of the Three Kings belonged to the inheritance of the top universe master. Apart from the legacies of the three major divine masters and the Qixin itself, there were no legacies more powerful than these three inheritances. Jian Wushuang obtained the inheritance of the first true king, which was already considered incredibly fortunate, not inferior to some of the inheritors on the Grave God Mountain. Although he hadn't acquired the inheritance of that true king yet, it was already within his grasp. Second Brother, as good as the ancient times may be, the present is equally if not better. Wu's said meaningfully, Do you know, what is the true core of the Qixin Temple? Jian Wushuang's eyes immediately lit up, but he dared not inquire directly. Instead, he vaguely replied, The core? Selecting inheritor? It was just a probing question. However, Wu's eyes gleamed, and he began talking about something unrelated to the Qixin Temple. The giant egg inside the Three Kings Hall. You should be aware of it. Jian Wushuang nodded. He had always had a speculation, whether it was true or false. It seemed that today he was going to get an accurate answer. That giant egg gave birth to a powerful being, and this powerful being has some connection with you. Jian Wushuang was greatly surprised. He had indeed guessed right. Wu's continued, Could it be that Xinling? It is him. Initially, Master instructed a divine master to suppress the three kings' court. Fuego perished, the three kings fell, but the existence that emerged from the giant egg was suppressed in the Qixin temple. He is the one who orchestrated behind the scenes, manipulating by Junwang to ensnare you. Wu's were explained in one breath. This was within Jian Wushuang's expectations. Although his expression showed surprise, deep down, he had anticipated it and was not overly shocked, just wondering why Wu's would bring up this matter. Could it be because of the appearance of Fuego? That's also a possibility. Later, Wu's confirmed his thoughts. The appearance of Fuego posed a great threat to the Qixin temple, and he had to be eliminated. But now they couldn't find the opponent, not even with Jinling. Jian Wushuang was somewhat puzzled and asked, "Since there's a threat, why plant this trouble in the first place?" Based on his deduction of Xinling's strength, at most, he was just a half-baked universe master. With such a weak existence, how could Qixin of the past have taken notice? They could have just killed him directly, or thrown him into the starry sky to lie low. Why bother suppressing him within the Qixin temple? Wasn't that asking for trouble? A giant egg caused the destruction of the three king courts and brought out Fuego, this super-powerful being. Even if the Qixin wasn't afraid of this force, they didn't need to keep suppressing him, unless there was a tremendous benefit. Wu's was momentarily unsure of how to answer. In fact, he wasn't very clear on why it was done this way. All of this was told to him by Jinling, all for the purpose of winning over Jian Wushuang. Well, I'm afraid the old man has other plans. In any case, it's highly beneficial. Wu's vaguely responded. However, Jian Wushuang remained steadfast in his belief. If the formidable beings of the Qixin considered it highly beneficial, then the other party must be extraordinary. A single egg could actually cause the destruction of the three king courts. Fuego and Xinling were not experts from the morotemporal space, but they came from the depths of the starry sky. There probably lay even greater secrets there. But Jian Wushuang was unaware of it at the moment. Wu's saw that the timing was about right. He had said what needed to be said and now began to approach the matter indirectly, trying to discern Jian Wushuang's current sentiments. The appearance of Fuego is a calamity for the Qixin temple. Now, we need a chosen one to suppress this calamity. Wu's finished speaking and looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang furrowed his brows slightly. Deep down, he felt something was not right. Could he be the chosen one? After all, Fuego was a universe master who had not yet fully recovered to his peak state. Even at the beginning of his recovery, Jian Wushuang wasn't a match for him, let alone now. Even if he successfully merged the Tao, he was still far from being a match. Well, Jian Wushuang hesitated. Don't rush to answer. Wu's personally poured him a glass of wine and continued. When I heard Lord Jinling say this, I also found it unbelievable. Normally, in the face of such a formidable enemy, we should go first. But guess what Lord Jinling said? Without waiting for Jian Wushuang to respond, Wu's revealed it directly. Lord Jinling said directly that you are the protagonist of this era. Everything in the Qixin temple from now on is within your grasp. You are the heir the Qixin temple is searching for across time and space. Wu's became more and more excited as he spoke. He wasn't trying to deceive Jian Wushuang. It was Lord Jinling who had said so himself, predicting Tianyi Rucher. Jian Wushuang stood up directly. The impact of these words on him was too profound. He found it hard to believe himself. Brother Wu's, these words must not be spoken lightly. On Grave God Mountain, there are many with greater potential than me, and Senior Shang has already reached the Supreme Peak realm. He is more capable than I am. Although he said these words, deep down, Jian Wushuang was ecstatic. He had always had this feeling that the Qixin temple seemed to be meant for him. He was destined. Wu's also stood up slowly, patted Jian Wushuang on the shoulder and said, Brother Wushuang, some things are destined early on. Even if you fight with all your might, there won't be a good outcome. I swear by the laws of heaven that everything I just said is what Lord Jinling said. If there's a half-truth, I'll be struck down by the 9-colored divine thunder. As these words were just uttered, A dark cloud faintly appeared above the cosmic sea of the Qixin temple. Zhenling blinked his pea-sized eyes, touched his nose, sensing that something was amiss there, but paid no attention to it. He sat alone in front of the chessboard, contemplating how to deal with that figure, Fuego. Now that the game had already begun, it was a matter of when the opponent would make a move. This time, once the opponent appeared, he would be there in an instant, directly killing them and eliminating this threat. Fuego? Verlesa. Humph. As for Jian Wushuang on the other side, the words just spoken by Wu Zhuo didn't seem like lies. Moreover, daring to swear to the heavenly Tao, it couldn't be baseless. Jian Wushuang now truly believed it. He even felt a bit dazed. No wonder Zhenling had given him the personal belongings of the Qixin temple. It turned out that he had been recognized as the inheritor of the Qixin temple long ago. In the midst of things, it was all the will of heaven. He was the biggest gainer in the Three Kings' court. This probably also had Zhenling's secret support. If Zhenling knew that Jian Wushuang was thinking this way, he would probably admire himself. It's good that Jian Wushuang dared to think. It's just that he didn't know why Zhenling insisted on waiting for him to complete the Tao merge before going to the Grave God Mountain. Now that he had received the treasure sent by Wu Zhuo, he felt that there might be an explanation. Perhaps Zhenling was likely to temper him, as the path of a strong person could not be too smooth. Then Wu Zhuo began to talk about Fuego. The more Jian Wushuang listened, the more unbelievable it became. "Am1 to be bait again?" he questioned. Wu Zhuo consoled him, saying, "It's not exactly bait. The other party wouldn't dare to threaten you. When Fuego revived, it was because of the origin source you refined for by Junwang. If Fuego wants to restore his strength, he will definitely come to you." Jian Wushuang hesitated. The last time, he was kidnapped by Junwang, wasting a considerable amount of his time. No wonder Zhenling insisted on taking him to the Grave God Mountain. It turned out to be for this. Once this matter is accomplished, not to mention a complete origin source of the universe, the future of Qixin Temple will be yours. Whether Jian Wushuang believed this statement or not, Wu Zhuo truly believed it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so ingratiating towards Jian Wushuang, addressing him as a brother and generously gifting him the universe origin source. A thought flickered in Jian Wushuang's mind. At this moment, whether he hesitated or refused, he had to face it. This is Qixin Temple. What could he do here? Just as Wu Zhuo said, the future of Qixin Temple would be him. Fuego, this troublemaker, must be eliminated, or it would not be beneficial to him. "All right, I agree." Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth and said, "Whatever is needed, just say it." A smile appeared on Wu Zhuo's face. He pulled Jian Wushuang to sit down and continued, "Lord Zhenling didn't really mention it, but you can lower your guard and try to let the other party approach you." "Let the other party find me?" Jian Wushuang was puzzled. But he had to go out for that. In the Elder Palace, even Zhenling's hands probably couldn't reach this place. You should have encountered some difficulties in these days. Wu Zhuo seemed to have anticipated it. He wasn't a fool. Since Zhenling was scheming like this, there were probably some covert actions already in motion. Now, hearing Wu Zhuo's words, Jian Wushuang recalled the events on Fenyang Island. Externally, it seemed that the palace Miaoyi he brought along was taken away by the formidable master Si Tian. Although he didn't mind, others had already noticed his exclusion and even suppression. Moreover, he was ridiculed by Si Tian Emperor in a sarcastic manner. Generally, strong individuals couldn't tolerate such treatment. This was a good entry point. Jian Wushuang couldn't survive in the Elder Palace, so the divine spirits took advantage of the opportunity to infiltrate. Jian Wushuang didn't say much, just nodded. He understood. All of this was probably being manipulated by Zhenling. Over the years, the inheritors in the four great secret realms were not uncommon, let alone in a place like the Elder Palace. Even if suppressed, one could only endure. Who told him that his strength was inferior? In Jian Wushuang's heart, a plan emerged. Since that was the case, he might as well turn the tables, especially since Zhenling had his back. Rather than sit idly by, he could take decisive action, eliminate Si Tian, and then betray the Elder Palace. stage a bitter plot for Shenling. By then, he could seize Gong Miaoyi and escape all the way to the extreme north. Even if Shenling didn't take the bait, he could still find Nieyuan. Simply perfect. After killing Citian, he would also obtain the components of the beast god weapon. The more Jian Wushuang thought about it, the more he felt the perfection of this plan. Killing just one Citian, Zhenling wouldn't care at all. Everything was for the greater good. So, sacrificing one Citian was a small price to pay. Jian Wushuang glanced around, and Wu Zua understood the implication. Calmly, he said, "Rest assured, the two of us here, no one can overhear." Subsequently, Jian Wushuang laid out his entire plan, disclosing it all to Wu Zua. Wu Zua clapped his hands, elated. This plan is truly virtuous. With his assistance, this plan could proceed flawlessly. After Jian Wushuang killed Citian and severely injured Tai San by making himself detonate using the universe origin source, he could discreetly take action and eliminate Tai San. Even if Sword God Chang Feng went to complain to Zhenling, it would be suppressed. Absolutely perfect. Jian Wushuang eliminated Citian. Getting rid of Tai San wasn't too much. Although Tai San's strength was not at the supreme peak, he was the Hall Master of Longevity Hall, possessing considerable authority, and was also Chang Feng's younger brother. These two brothers had caused a lot of obstruction in his path to becoming the contender for the Palace Lord position. Naturally, they had to be eliminated. After much deliberation, the two of them thoroughly analyzed the plan, devising an escape route. Escape was easy. He had some connection with Chehuang and needed to pull him into the scheme. Once successful, with Wu Zua replacing Chang Feng as the Palace Lord, the position of Central Hall's master could be given to Chehuang. Moreover, Wu Zua could also assist him in becoming a Tier 6 emperor. This advantage needed no further explanation. Chehuang would undoubtedly agree to it. In the aftermath of being pursued, it was a matter for the enforcement hall. At that time, it would all depend on acting skills. There was just one question. Whose universe origin source exploded? In the end, Wu Zua gritted his teeth and decided to handle it himself. Origin source self-detonation. To destroy a universe origin source. Wu Zua didn't have this type of origin source among the ones he possessed. This origin source, I obtained it in the God's tomb, a supremely and special life form. I exchanged it for my own life. Do you call that greedy? Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised, but then he thought that someone like Wu Zua wouldn't spend money on things he could snatch. 10% is enough. Jian Wushuang accepted it without hesitation. Wu Zua then instructed, "Be cautious in everything. After the incident, I will suppress the news and send people to capture you. Let those who try to capture you inadvertently leak this matter." Excellent. Jian Wushuang nodded in agreement. Everything was going according to plan. Now they just needed an opportunity. At this moment, someone outside reported and presented an invitation. Invitation to the grand wedding of the Blessing Longevity Hall Master. After reading it, Wu Zua was overjoyed and handed the invitation to Jian Wushuang, saying, "Haha! It's truly heaven helping me." 10,000 years later, Jian Wushuang secretly rejoiced. This way he still had plenty of time to prepare. It was indeed a perfect opportunity, one that couldn't be missed. 10,000 years later, Longevity Hall Master Tai San and Gong Miaoyi happily tied the knot and became Dao companions. This was truly a perfect opportunity. At that time, he would definitely present a grand gift. A forced marriage, murder, and treasure acquisition, all in one go. Wu Zua patted his shoulder and comforted him. "Wushuang, my brother, don't be too sad. I will help you kill Tai San, and the woman will be yours too." "Wu Zua, you're mistaken. I have no interest in her." Jian Wushuang shook his head. His heart had died long ago, on that spirited night. Snatching Gong Miaoyi was just part of the plan, unrelated to romantic feelings. The real target was Citian. At this moment, Wu Zua handed out another jade slip and said, "You should hold on to this. I've gathered information about the beast god weapon for you. There is also a beast god weapon in the heavenly realm. You can give it a try. If you need help, contact me anytime." The heart of the candle dragon? Mahayana Spirit Mountain? Jian Wushuang felt a slight joy. This conflicted with the information provided by Xinling, but he was more inclined to trust Wu Zhuo. After all, the latter was a prominent figure in the heavenly realm, and his information was more reliable than that gathered by that rat Xinling. That kid Citian once asked Tai San for it, but there's a supreme peak expert on the Mahayana Spirit Mountain. Ordinary people can't take it down. However, if I step in, the other party should give some face. If it's impossible, just snatch it. Wu's was said indifferently. Mahayana Spirit Mountain, located at the extreme west of the heavenly realm. There, at the base of the temple, Mahayana Spirit Mountain stood aligned with the divine temple, ready to intercept any attempts to seize the temple. After all, meddling in temple affairs was beyond the purview of the Elder Palace. If Jian Wushuang were to attempt a seizure, he could succeed based on his strength, but if the Elder Palace intervened, the temple would also take action. Of course, if he were to align himself with the temple, he could employ certain methods to make them willingly offer their support. However, Jian Wushuang was now entangled with the Elder Palace and Wu's Wushuan, making it impossible for him to seek refuge in the temple. After discussing the subsequent plans, Jian Wushuang understood that Xinling would personally take action this time, and he could rely on Xinling with confidence. If he encountered Fuego, Xinling would intervene. Jian Wushuang's main concern was Fuego. In the Northern Territory's Shadow Sect, they had almost been eradicated, and the strongest remaining might be a Tier 6 emperor. Facing such strong opponents, even if Jian Wushuang couldn't defeat them, escaping wouldn't pose a significant problem. Once the plan was roughly settled, Jian Wushuang took his leave. With still a millennium before the appointed time, he could visit the Beiwang Tower and consider closing himself off again before taking action, devouring the universe origin source. Currently, he possessed 3/10 of the universal origin source, aside from the 1/10 set to self-destruct. Though somewhat chaotic, containing various origin sources, it happened to be suitable for enhancing his extreme Dao. At present, his extreme Dao had just reached the 9th level. With these origin sources, he could bring his extreme Dao to its fullest level. Having the essence of all things, he could also prevent them from deviating. He was not afraid that the strengthening of his extreme Dao would lead to the complete deviation of his power of all things. What he feared was that, after the deviation, it would become uncontrollable, and he would be unable to fully integrate the Dao. After Wu's Wushuan escorted Jian Wushuang outside the gate, watching his departing figure, he felt a complex mix of emotions. This time, he didn't know if Jian Wushuang would succeed. Even if he succeeded, having involved himself, he had now joined Jian Wushuang on the same boat. He had great expectations for Jian Wushuang. With the Dao Lord's formidable strength and charisma, it was only a matter of course for him to eventually take control of the Qixin Temple. While others were skeptical, he was optimistic. The present support was a timely boost, and the future seemed even more promising. Swoosh! After seeing off Jian Wushuang, he turned and headed to the origin source sea within the Qixin Temple to report to Zhenling Master. The plan has been set in motion. We'll take action in a millennium, Wu Zhuo respectfully reported. Zhenling disrupted the chessboard and turned to face Wu Zhuo. This time, no matter what happens, you must ensure the safety of Jian Wu Shuang. If anything goes wrong, you'll be held accountable first. Wu Zhuo felt somewhat awkward. Why did he always have to bear the blame every time there was a failure? However, he didn't dare to contradict Zhenling's words, and proceeded to outline the plan that Jian Wushuang had presented. Stroking his beard, Zhenling burst into laughter. Not bad. This plan suits my taste. Inform me in advance on the day of the abduction. I haven't witnessed such a lively scene in a long time. Absolutely. Wu Zhuo was also quite excited. On Yuanyang Island, Jian Wushuang first visited a treasure pavilion, where he sold a P276 cosmic crystal, exchanged it for some necessary treasures, and then converted 100 billion godstones. After buying many essential items and exchanging a large amount of godstones, he spent less than 100 cubic universe crystals. In real terms, one universe crystal was worth 1 billion cubic godstones. The purchased treasures weren't particularly rare, But due to the uniqueness of universe crystals, only a few people exchanged godstones for universe crystals, and no one had yet thought of exchanging universe crystals for godstones. So, the other party was generous and directly gave Jian Wushuang some needed treasures. With the godstones in hand, Jian Wushuang went to a tavern and settled all the previously owed godstones directly. The other party was extremely deferential, fearing to offend Wuxia. Jian Wushuang took the opportunity to scold Wuxia, making it seem like the two were not getting along. This was also part of the plan. Leaving the tavern, he didn't waste any time and went straight to the Beiwang Tower. Taking advantage of the available time, he naturally wanted to break through here again, not willing to waste a single moment. Arriving in front of the Beiwang Tower, Jian Wushuang looked up. The Beiwang Tower soared billions of miles high, reaching into the clouds, more majestic than the Demon Sound Mountain. Originally, this tower was a pinnacle treasure of the primal universe, but it was tricked over by Jinling. It was said that the inheritors of the fourth round of trials were selected and tested here. Of course, those trial participants could only reach the 14th floor at most. It was already impressive for Dao Lords to reach the 10th floor. Reaching the 14th floor was extraordinary, comparable to a Tier 2 emperor. Back in the original planet, Jian Wushuang was only at the strength of around Tier 2. It seemed that the Dao Lord here had potential not inferior to his own. The ultimate Dao with such tremendous potential generally wouldn't descend to the Grave God Mountain. Hu Qing was quite exceptional. Originally, Jinling had high hopes for Hu Qing. Now, the tables had turned, and he was the one set to inherit the Qishan Temple. This Beiwang Tower would be his in the future, and everything would be his. Jian Wushuang stepped into Beiwang Tower. On the negative first floor's main hall, there were many rows of seats here, and quite a few people were already seated. As soon as he entered, he heard someone calling his name. Brother Wushuang. It was Wan Yen. Jian Wushuang revealed a smile and walked over. Brother Wan Yen. He was somewhat surprised. These two shouldn't have been here for long. Shouldn't they be exploring the area? Wan Yen pulled Jian Wushuang over and first introduced a Tier 4 peak-level emperor standing nearby. Brother Wushuang, this friend, Taoist Tianxi, is an inheritor who came down from the Grave God Mountain. Don't be fooled by his Tier 4 emperor status. He has reached the 41st level, Wan Yen exclaimed. Tianxi sat in place, unmoved, just nodding at Jian Wushuang. No wonder beings of this level all had their pride. Ignoring this, Jian Wushuang asked, "Why haven't I seen Brother Dong Sheng?" "Ah, don't mention it. As soon as that guy arrived here, he hasn't come out. He's already on the 57th level now. Probably won't come out before reaching the 60th level," Wan Yen said helplessly. Originally, the two of them thought that this place would be similar to the Demon Sound Mountain, but upon arriving, they discovered that it was completely different from the Demon Sound Mountain. That complete universe origin source was not something one could casually comprehend. Moreover, it was said that this origin source belonged to a divine master. Jian Wushuang was surprised to hear this. Back then, he had only vaguely sensed the origin source of that primordial divine master. The powerful aura had made him tremble, although he was weak at the time and couldn't comprehend any mysteries. But now it was different. Even if the origin source of the Qishan was in front of him, he could explain its mysteries. "Brother Wushuang, you're going to strike it rich this time." Wan Yen approached Jian Wushuang and whispered. Jian Wushuang asked in surprise, "Why do you say that?" "Ha. You'll know when you try it," Wan Yen teased, leaving a sense of anticipation. On the side, Emperor Tianxi wore a somewhat disdainful smile, though he refrained from commenting. Jian Wushuang bid farewell to Wan Yen and arrived in front of a teleportation array within the Grand Hall. This was the sole passage to enter the Beiwang Tower. 100 million cubic godstones, declared the elderly guardian of the teleportation array, his voice icy. Jian Wushuang readily handed over the godstones this time. In return, the guardian handed him a jade slip. Jian Wushuang's thought power gently probed the jade slip, and he finally understood why Wan Yen had spoken as he did. With this jade slip, you can enter and exit freely. Can be used 10 times, and afterward it will automatically shatter. At that point, you'll need to exchange it for a new one using your own points. The elderly guardian spoke these words and then closed his eyes, unwilling to say more. After investigating the jade slip, Jian Wushuang comprehended everything. Upon entering the Beiwang Tower, for each level he passed, he would have an opportunity to comprehend the origin source of the universe and earn 100 points. Jian Wushuang was a Tao Lord, corresponding to the first 10 levels. After passing these 10 levels, he would receive 1,000 points and 10 opportunities to comprehend the origin source of the universe. If he surpassed the 10th level, he could obtain double rewards. For example, breaking through one level would yield 200 points and 2 opportunities to comprehend the universe origin source. Breaking through 2 levels would yield 400 points and 4 opportunities to comprehend the universe origin source, and so on. Haha! Jian Wushuang couldn't help but burst into laughter. This place truly was a treasure trove for him. He was about to strike it rich. His laughter immediately drew the attention of many people, who looked over as if watching a fool. The cold and indifferent emperor guarding this place couldn't help but sneer, but he didn't bother with Jian Wushuang. Only one person seemed confident in Jian Wushuang. Wearing a smile on his face, Wang Yan knew that Jian Wushuang had truly struck it rich this time, and his smile wasn't mocking but rather one of joy for the other's success. Emperor Tianxi set down his wine cup and casually remarked, "Brother Wang Yan, your friend seems quite confident. What do you think of his strength?" Wang Yan asked casually. "A tier 5 emperor, but he falls far short compared to you. He should be able to reach the 46th level." Tianxi, who had been around here for a long time, had a keen eye for people. Wang Yan laughed heartily. Reaching the 49th level was indeed commendable. The reason he hadn't continued was that he had more important matters to attend to. After resting for a moment and getting acquainted with Emperor Tianxi, he found him to be quite impressive, despite some arrogance. Originally, upon seeing Jian Wushuang arrive, he had planned to leave, but now he decided to stay and observe. "You have a keen eye. He's only at the 46th level, still a long way from me," Wang Yan remarked with a smile. Many people were unaware that Jian Wushuang was only a Tao Lord. He didn't reveal it himself, and even a tier 6 emperor couldn't see through his true cultivation realm. If intentionally concealed, ordinary Supreme Peak beings couldn't discern his actual level. There were many gazes fixed on Jian Wushuang, but they quickly shifted away. Such occurrences had happened many times before, and only a few could truly amaze everyone. A few years ago, a tier 5 emperor broke through to the 54th level, attracting a lot of attention, but he quickly disappeared. Speculation arose that he might be an inheritor of the most supreme peak on the Grave God Mountain. On the Grave God Mountain there were also several levels. The ultimate emperors naturally occupied the first level. Then there were some experts in the special origin source Tao, such as those who followed the Myre Daos or those like Broly, who excelled in the Tao of transformation. This is the second level, and in fact they are not much weaker than those on the ultimate Tao. Some of them are even more powerful than the emperors on the ultimate Tao. Broly is a prime example. His strength is extremely formidable. As a tier 6 emperor, he can easily kill some Supreme Peak experts in the Earth realms. It's almost like he's a freak. Next are the emperors with second-grade origin sources. They are not too weak either, and some of them are extraordinary, like Shen Wuyang and Tongtian Buddha, who can break through to the 5th or 10th floor or level. But now they all have their own inheritances and don't have time to come here. In this Beiwang Tower, there are 7 layers of inheritors, 2 layers of strongmen from the Elder Palace, and the rest are the native emperors. Zhenling is eager to find talent and is willing to spend a price to help some promising native emperors repair their origin sources. The cost of this is much higher than freely plundering foreign emperors. Emperors from the outside world are eager to come in, but it's not so easy for emperors from other universes to come here, and emperor-level powerhouses will be rejected. They can only plunder some Tao Lords or Grand Yen Immortals. Yen Immortals are troublesome. They have to go through 2 screenings. Zhenling can't wait any longer. He is impatient to leave the original universe or, more precisely, to leave this river of time and space. This place is like a remote and backward village, a wilderness. Staying here is not only inconvenient for selecting inheritors, but it also hinders these inheritors from exploring space more effectively. When a large number of Tier 6 emperors appear among the inheritors, the 4 great secret realms also become somewhat constrained. After all, these powerhouses can't all stay in the 4 great secret realms. In the vast river of time and space outside, there was nowhere as adventurous as the 4 great secret realms. So, Jinling was a bit anxious. He wanted to quickly nurture a group of powerful beings, then eliminate the true master who suppressed the original universe, settling the cause and effect. At that time, he could leave this time and space with the Qixin Temple, heading towards a more expansive world, perhaps even returning to the Moro dimension. Of course, that was a story for another time. Jian Wushuang, at this moment, became increasingly delighted. On the walls of the external Grand Hall there was a list. The same list was also present in the Jade Slip. At the top were the Dao Lords and Emperors. Among the Dao Lords, the one leading the ranks was a formidable individual named Mo Long, who had already broken through the 6th level. The second had only reached the 3rd level, lagging behind by half. Among the Emperors, they started counting from the Tier 4 Emperors because those of Tier 1 to 3 wouldn't bother coming here. Those who could reach this point as Dao Lords were all exceptional geniuses. Those below the Tier 4 Emperors had weak potential. In Jian Wushuang's view, anyone who didn't directly reach the Tier 4 Emperor after Dao Merge was not considered a genius. Those who could achieve this directly after Dao Merge were the true powerhouses. However, most emperors would only reach Tier 2 after the Dao Merge, which was the most common scenario. Tier 1 emperors were quite rare, and those who did often ended up being sharpening stones for those monstrous AO lords and were killed by those heaven-defying Dao lords. There were also some who, after merging Dao, directly achieved the Tier 3 emperor, with most of them being inheritors on the Grave God Mountain. There were also a few who could directly reach the Tier 4 emperor, but they were relatively few. As for directly entering the Tier 5 emperor, currently only Hu Qing achieved that. To directly enter Tier 5 emperor, first the spatial origin source had to reach a high realm. With this crucial factor, it was possible to accomplish it in one step. However, Hu Qing's level of abnormality was something Jian Wushuang had never seen before. Back in the great desolate wilderness, he entered the Dao in one step, which was simply absurd. No wonder Jinling had such high expectations for Hu Qing. There was a reason for it. Moreover, Hu Qing had always been one step ahead in cultivation. Now, having successfully integrated the complete state of harmony, he directly reached the peak level of Tier 5. Probably wouldn't take much longer for him to advance to Tier 6. There were a series of inheritances awaiting him, and soon he would catch up to Shang's progress. Unconsciously, I have fallen behind so much. Jian Wushuang, for a moment, wasn't sure if he had fallen behind too much on his own, or if Hu Qing's speed was too fast. On the Jade Slip, besides the Dao Lord, there was another name that surprised him. It was the name of Qishui, who had reached the 54th floor. A Tier 5 emperor breaking through to the 54th floor represented breaking through 4 layers. Among the rankings of Tier 5 emperors, the one who had broken through the most was not the inheritor Qishui, but a Tier 5 emperor from within the Elder Palace. As for Tier 6 emperors, there were very few who could achieve a breakthrough. The strongest individual, having only broken through 1 layer, was Tai San, the mentor of Si Tian. He was also one of the people Jian Wushuang planned to kill this time. Of course, he was not a match. He only needed to seriously injure the other party, and Wu Zuo would secretly arrange for the opponent's demise. Then Jian Wushuang saw the list at the top. It was the number of floors broken through by Supreme Peak experts, surpassing the 60th floor already classified one as a Supreme Peak expert. However, since the Beiwang Tower was brought to the Elder Palace, only a few Supreme Peak experts had managed to break through. It wasn't too surprising. Speaking of the Elder Palace, there were only 4 Supreme Peak experts. Even if the Supreme Peak experts from the outside world were added, it would probably still be only a few. What puzzled Jian Wushuang was that among the Supreme Peak experts in the Elder Palace, only Wu Zuo appeared on the list, and he was ranked first. Soon, Jian Wushuang understood. Initially, when Wu Zuo dared to confront the formidable Changfeng head-on, those words turned out to be true. The 3 palace masters were quite cunning, knowingly weaker than Wuxia in strength. Yet they let Wuxia alone challenge the trials. Even if Wuxia successfully passed, he would still be just a hall master. Invisibly, the three palace masters divided the awe-inspiring effect among themselves. Even if a hall master was this powerful, how would those inheritors and the native emperors think? 74th floor. Wuxia smoothly broke through 4 layers. Some other supreme peaks, let alone breaking through, were still on the 60th floor. The further they went, the harder it was to break through. Each step required a significant improvement in strength. Truly, it was unknown how Emperor Zhuyun accomplished it back then. Jian Wushuang didn't dwell on those thoughts and proceeded directly. He wanted to break all these rules and show those people who the future strong ones were. Swish! After entering the teleportation array, he directly activated the token and entered the first floor of the Beiwang Tower. Jian Wushuang's figure seemed to traverse beyond a universe, reappearing on a desolate planet. This desolate planet had a powerful gravity and was exceptionally tough, comparable to an innate treasure. How many innate treasures could this entire planet exchange for? Jian Wushuang was somewhat excited. His old habit acted up again. When he saw precious treasures, he couldn't resist taking detours. Splash! On the opposite side, a shadow condensed from black mist appeared. Cultivator, defeat me to enter the next level of the tower. The powerful figure formed by the black mist seemed to be an ordinary Dao Lord. Jian Wushuang didn't pay any attention to it. He was more interested in this barren planet. Please enlighten me. Boom! The dark mist expert wasted no time and charged forward. The opponent wielded 6 sharp knives as their treasures, emitting a fierce aura. For an ordinary Dao Lord, facing such a foe might not be easy. However, for Jian Wushuang, the adversary was no different from an ant. Too slow. Jian Wushuang's words had just fallen when he vanished in an instant. If he didn't want to play around, he could have effortlessly claimed victory with just a glare. Crack! Jian Wushuang's swift chop shattered the black mist. Afterward, his figure disappeared from the original spot. Upon reappearing, it was the same location. No changes. Jian Wushuang swept his gaze around. Since there were no apparent alterations, why teleport him away? Was it a spatial transformation? Jian Wushuang brushed through 9 layers of space but found no issues, so he dismissed further thoughts. The subsequent journey was a breeze, annihilating everything in his path. For the first 10 levels, he personally took action on the first, and thereafter just a hint of his aura would overwhelm the opponents. Next came the breakthrough. Jian Wushuang's thought power entered the token, adding 1,000 points and granting 10 opportunities to comprehend the universe origin source. He didn't yet understand the purpose of those points, but the chance to comprehend the universe origin source was extraordinary. For Jian Wushuang, it was a significant temptation. In the SkySight heavenly chessboard, though there were numerous chess pieces shaped by the universe origin source, he lacked the strength to copy them. He could only mimic those pieces marked with military ranks, which were not true manifestations of the universe origin source or were pre-made versions. Now, they didn't provide much assistance to him anymore. He was prepared to explore the universe origin source within the Beiwang Tower, curious about its nature. Buzz! The desolate planet finally underwent some changes. Above, it was no longer a barren expanse. Instead, numerous peculiarly shaped stones emerged. Cultivator, encountering me means your strength surpasses that of a Dao Lord. You're impressive. The black mist once again condensed into a formidable figure. However, in his hands there were still 6 sharp knives. Now that you qualify, learn my title. Jian Wushuang, however, furrowed his brows and cut off the opponent with a sword chi. Initially curious, he became pressed for time later on, eagerly wanting to explore the universe origin source within Beiwang Tower. Therefore, he didn't give the other a chance to speak. In the moment of defeating his opponent, all the strong individuals who had passed through Beiwang Tower received a message. Dao Lord Jian Wushuang reached the 12th floor, inside the grand hall of the negative 1st floor of Beiwang Tower. Not many paid attention. A Dao Lord breaking through the initial floors was normal, nothing to be astonished about. However, one person stood up directly. Then, he looked at a Tier 5 emperor sitting beside him. Shocked. Is he a Tao Lord? What, couldn't you tell? Wang Yan revealed a faint sneer. The astonished person was Tianxi Emperor, a peak-level Tier 4 expert. When he first saw Jian Wushuang, he thought the latter was a weak Tier 5 emperor. He never expected Jian Wushuang to be a Tao Lord. That misunderstanding was quite significant. A Tao Lord with the aura of a Tier 5 emperor, wouldn't that mean? Brother Wang Yan, why didn't you say it earlier? Tianxi regretted a bit. Such a heaven-defying Tao Lord should have been known on the Grave God Mountain. How come he had no recollection at all? Jian Wushuang. Later, Tianxi thought of a name and exclaimed, "Is it him? Then it makes sense." With the increase of inheritors, Jian Wushuang's name gradually faded on the Grave God Mountain. It was normal not to remember for a while. At this moment, there were still some cultivators who had received messages but hadn't had the chance to check, only to find that the token was constantly flashing. Each time, it signaled the transmission of a message. Tao Lord Jian Wushuang, breakthrough to the 12th level. Tao Lord Jian Wushuang, breakthrough to the 13th level. Tao Lord Jian Wushuang, breakthrough to the 20th level. Oh heavens, is he really human? Someone exclaimed continuously, then stared directly at the leaderboard in the Grand Hall. On the breakthrough list, ranked first was Jian Wushuang. This was an overall ranking. Most of the top positions were occupied by Tao Lords because it was easier for them to make breakthroughs. Now Jian Wushuang had directly surpassed the first position. Ranked first, breaking through 10 levels in one go, and it was still changing. 12th level, 16th level, 20th level. Now, not only the formidable individuals within the Beiwang Tower were astonished, but also some challengers who were attempting the trials emerged to see what was happening. It's Jian Wushuang, the inheritor who was taken away before reaching the Grave God Mountain. Many recognized Jian Wushuang's identity. Si Tian, who returned from Fenyang Island, stood in the Grand Hall at this moment. His brows furrowed tightly. Tao Lord! Si Tian's expression darkened. Then he snorted coldly, thinking to himself, he's only a Tao Lord. After all, a Tao Lord is just a Tao Lord. As long as he doesn't complete the Tao merge, I can suppress you anytime. Si Tian's current strength was among the top ranks even among the Tier 5 emperors. Although he hadn't achieved a breakthrough, he could reach the pinnacle. This time he came specifically for the 49th level and he was quite confident. At this moment, he still had confidence in himself. Even if Jian Wushuang defied the natural order and broke through to the 20th level, it would only be equivalent to the strength of the 13th level, comparable to a complete stage Tier 4 emperor at most. There was still a considerable gap between them. Moreover, Jian Wushuang was still very poor. He personally witnessed Jian Wushuang unable to produce even 100 million cubic godstones and ultimately failed to enter the valley. Wang Yan was the only calm person in the Grand Hall at this moment. He wasn't surprised at all. Back in the blood mist of the Demon Sound Mountain, Jian Wushuang had erupted with the prowess of a Tier 6 emperor, and now he emerged from seclusion again for battle. It's likely that he had already surpassed him by quite a bit. At least he could break through to around the 40th level. Adding the 10 levels from Tao Lords, that made it 40 levels, reaching the ranks of Tier 6 emperors once the Tao merge succeeded, he would directly become a Tier 6 emperor. This was probably unprecedented, with no one before and no one to come after. The current Beiwang Tower not only attracted numerous inheritors, but also had many powerful individuals from the Elder Palace coming to observe. Among them was Huang, who even manifested an avatar. In the blink of an eye, is this kid already close to my level? Huang shook inwardly. Wuzu took a step and arrived next to Huang, encouraging him. You have to work hard, or Jian Wushuang will surpass you. I've agreed to that matter, but I can only maintain it for 3 breaths. Everything depends on you. Wang's expression remained unchanged as he transmitted his thoughts. At the beginning of Jian Wushuang's proposed plan, Huang hesitated a bit, mainly fearing that Jian Wushuang might not be capable, and others might enter before killing him. Now it seemed that there were no unexpected factors. Wuzu was secretly pleased. The plan had a 70% chance of success. With the law enforcement hall cooperating with Qiu Huang, who was in charge of the central teleportation array, they could fully ensure Jian Wushuang's safe departure. The two only exchanged a glance before leaving. They didn't linger in this place. Wu Zhuo was well aware of Lian Wushuan's strength. There was nothing much to see here. Could the future inheritor of the Qixin Temple be weak? The stronger Jian Wushuang demonstrated, the more confident Wu Zhuo became in the path he had chosen. In the future, when Jian Wushuang reached the pinnacle inherited Qixin's legacy, not to mention a hall master, even making him a palace master wouldn't be excessive. He had indeed helped Jian Wushuang quite a bit. Now he stood firmly on the same boat, becoming Jian Wushuang's confidant. At this moment, Jian Wushuang inside the Beiwang Tower was still unaware that he had attracted the attention of countless onlookers. He was still immersed in his cultivation. By now, he had reached the 40th level. The opponents he encountered were all Tier 5 emperors. However, Jian Wushuang still showed no intention of drawing his sword. The phantom sword technique, surrounded by countless condensed sword qi, was formidable enough to slay any adversary. Yet, the powerful figure shrouded in black mist had not revealed his title until now. Swish! Countless sword qi swept through, dispersing the black mist once again. Jian Wushuang curiously surveyed the changes around him. Starting from the 10th level, stones appeared on the planet. At the 20th level, water emerged. By the 30th level, vegetation had grown, and now, at the 40th level, the transformations of this planet had surpassed Jian Wushuang's imagination. Life had unexpectedly flourished. Is this the power of all things? Jian Wushuang exclaimed with joy upon this discovery. This planet was connected to the power of all things. The similarity between this planet and the one he encountered in the starry sky was striking. This connection proved immensely beneficial to his power of all things. He no longer worried about his power of all things undergoing deviation. Instead, he allowed it to evolve freely. Because he realized that the ultimate evolution of the power of all things might lead to life. It was an entirely new force. Godly power was merely the power of a divine body. The power of all things originated from the myriad Tao origin source. And after the transformation of all things, what would it become? Thought power gave rise to consciousness, consumption fostered life's robust growth, and the power of all things evolved life. That was the life power. As Jian Wushuang contemplated this, his aura became somewhat weighty, the life power. He had never even heard of such a thing. The life power. After another change in the surroundings, Jian Wushuang noticed an increase in the number of fish in the water. These were the most primitive forms of life, creatures that still relied on water for survival and had not yet evolved the ability to exist on land. Well, let me give them a boost. Jian Wushuang revealed a slight smile. He wanted to test whether the speculated life power truly existed within him. A powerful force of the power of all things descended, followed by a rapid transformation. At that moment, his extreme Tao, also no longer suppressed by the power of all things, began to undergo a metamorphosis. Directly reaching the perfection of the 9th level, the extreme Tao was completely perfected, and the power of all things also underwent a thorough transformation. However, what emerged from the transformation was not the life power. Instead, it was a peculiar halo radiating green light. As this unique force just came into being, the force of devouring swarmed in, starting to consume it. So, it's like this? The fusion turned out to be like this. Without him needing to do anything, the three forces quickly devoured and then merged. The life power had already taken root the moment he conceived it. A completely new power. If someone could still master the power of all things before, the life power was something he had never even heard of. Mastering the life power meant perhaps living and dying along with all things. Everything was at his whim. The breakthrough on Jian Wushuang's side surprised the powerful figure in the distant black mist. It didn't notice any visible change in Jian Wushuang. It was just curious why Jian Wushuang didn't directly kill him this time. How come? Are you out of tricks? The formidable figure shrouded in black mist finally uttered a complete sentence. In the Beiwang Tower, there was only one opponent, but the strength of that opponent varied with each level. Jian Wushuang, having mastered the life power, underwent a profound transformation in his demeanor. When wielding the power of thought, his mental strength was abundant, and anyone who cast a glance at him would sense that Jian Wushuang was a formidable warrior with a keen consciousness. The power of devouring, on the other hand, carried a hint of malevolence. Yet, upon second thought, considering that humans consume various forms of life, can it truly be deemed malevolent? That malevolent aura seemed like an inherent fear, causing unease in anyone who beheld it. The power of all things was distinct from the preceding two. The power of all things altered Jian Wushuang's perspective on myriad Daos, resembling his unique Dao. Regardless of the nature of the power, it would ultimately be assimilated into the pinnacle of swordsmanship, the sword Dao. The devouring power within the illusory phantom sword, the potent thought power of the transcendent immortal formation, or the heaven's punishment of all things, converged to form the heaven's punishment sword strike. Now equipped with a newfound power, the life power, his demeanor became gentle. Everything and everyone encountering him could sense a heartwarming aura. It was a natural aura, pure and innocent aura. It naturally elicited favorable feelings towards him. He represented life. At this moment, Jian Wushuang opened his arms, radiating a soothing influence over everything. The formidable figure condensed in black mist stared at Jian Wushuang as if he were an idiot. However, soon after, the fish in the water began to undergo a metamorphosis. Those inch-long fish gradually grew larger, developing various peculiar and grotesque wings. These beings transcended everything, flying over the land before finally reaching a point where flight became possible. "You actually intervened in the rules of this place?" exclaimed the formidable figure shrouded in black mist. His eyes widened in disbelief. This place possessed a complete universe origin source. How could it be manipulated by a Tao Lord? Jian Wushuang completely relaxed. The fish that soared through the sky circled around him, treating him as a godfather. The origin source of this place should be a complete origin source of all things. Jian Wushuang speculated. To be able to evolve this planet, the universe origin source here was undoubtedly extraordinary. Only the origin source of all things could achieve this. He had never imagined that someone could actually produce a complete origin source of all things. The three divine masters were indeed extraordinary. The formidable figure shrouded in black mist did not answer Jian Wushuang's question but instead interrogated, "How did you do it?" "Because I am a god, the one true god." Jian Wushuang's aura surged, the power of life emanating, encompassing millions of miles around. All life in this area began to degenerate. The fish wings lost their wings and fell into the water, their bodies then decomposing and weakening, transforming into all things. The formidable figure in black mist also underwent degeneration. Its degeneration was somewhat slower. First, the mist became thin, and then only a red robe fell to the ground. "Gone!" Jian Wushuang exclaimed in surprise. This was the first time he had used such power. Unexpectedly, he made the opponent disappear directly. Then, he reversed life, accelerating the vitality of this place once again, and the formidable figure in black mist revived. This time, without waiting for the opponent to speak, Jian Wushuang unleashed a sword qi, directly slaying the figure. The power of life had now fused, different from his initial speculations. Initially, he thought that during the fusion, there needed to be a harmonious unity among the three, mutually restraining each other. But the result turned out to be different. In this planet, he witnessed the ultimate transformation of the power of all things before deciding to make a desperate attempt. "Turns out, I was overthinking it." Jian Wushuang scratched his head. He had indeed overthought things. Whether he had overestimated the extreme Tao or underestimated it, he couldn't say for sure. However, he had successfully brought the extreme Tao to perfection, with the path reaching its end. All that remained was the perfection of the sword Tao, followed by the integration of the Taos. Everything was getting better. He no longer needed to delve into the realm of black holes or pursue the elusive perfection of heart power. Everything was progressing positively. He found all of this to be somewhat straightforward. This was all thanks to this place. Otherwise, if he continued on his previous path, suppressing the transformation of the power of all things, he might never have been able to break through in his entire lifetime. Jian Wushuang's hands trembled with excitement. Since mastering the extreme Tao, he had faced numerous hardships along the way. During the period of thought power, he was either running in the great desolate wilderness or preparing to escape. There was no peace for him, and he miraculously survived, eventually entering the Qixin temple. During the period of devouring power, he was troubled by an evil aura. Even in the subsequent power of all things, he never ceased his killings. It was as if he had become a different person, sacrificing lives for the greater cause, killing countless individuals. Now everything was getting better. He had finally rid himself of that particular kind of murderous intent, which was different from the sword Tao's ferocity. The Tao of the sword is belligerent. To devour is to destroy. There remained a disparity. Surroundings shifted once again as he broke through another layer. The planetary environment changed accordingly. Jian Wushuang continued to refine the life power, paying no attention to the formidable black mist figure. Persistently tormenting the adversary with the life power, his body rapidly dissipated, only to swiftly recover afterward. The convergence of life and death pushed the black mist figure to the brink of collapse. Though not a manifestation of life, it was nevertheless connected to all things in the world. Even a piece of wood could be manipulated by Jian Wushuang using the life power, transforming it into a towering giant tree. Simultaneously, a trace of weakened origin could be rekindled with radiance. In essence, Jian Wushuang discovered that the life power corresponded not only to life itself but to all things and paths of existence. He could intervene in all of them. This ability bestowed upon him numerous advantages. Moreover, he found that accelerating life equated to accelerating time, indicating a profound connection to the origin of time. He even pondered whether, after the successful fusion of extreme Tao and the origin source, he could directly transcend space and grasp the source of time. There was indeed such a possibility. If that were the case, an emperor mastering the origin source of time would truly be extraordinary. Defying fate. You, a mere envoy of all things, dare to treat me like this? I am personally refined by the esteemed temple master Xianxia, personally refined as the envoy of all things. Just you wait until the later floors. I will thoroughly ravage you. The black mist figure repeatedly died and resurrected, continuously cursing Jian Wushuang. If Jian Wushuang had killed him with a single sword strike, it would have been acceptable. However, by persistently delaying and tormenting him, he grew infuriated, swearing to retaliate when Jian Wushuang reached the later floors. Yet Jian Wushuang paid no attention to the adversary. However, upon hearing Xianxia, a hint of surprise flashed across his face. But he didn't inquire further. If the master of Black Tortoise Temple was truly Xianxia, he would have come looking for him long ago. Moreover, in the Three Kings' Court, Xianxia had mentioned that they would meet in the future, not now. Still, the coincidence of names intrigued him a bit. In the future, he would definitely have to meet the mysterious temple master Xianxia. As for the envoy of all things, Jian Wushuang had investigated and found it to be nothing more than a puppet. It possessed no extraordinary capabilities. A single sword strike could easily shatter it. However, this particular envoy of all things manipulated the entire origin source of the universe. In specific realms, it could unleash various layers of combat power. At the highest level was the complete master of all things. That was the true definition of strength. Perhaps, within the Qixin Temple, no one could reach the pinnacle. The master of all things was one of the three divine masters, on par with the primordial divine masters. It surpassed even the three kings in strength. It stood at the peak among the universe masters, slightly weaker only than Qixin. Exploring the origin source of such a formidable being was indeed worth his efforts. Once he finished exploring this planet, he would contemplate the origin source of all things. He wanted to see what the origin source was like at the level of the universe master. After breaking through so many layers, he had gained countless insights, at least 100 million times. With each doubling of layers, he had now surpassed 30 floors. Who knew how many times? After Jian Wushuang sensed the changes in this planet, he once again killed the envoy of all things with a single sword strike. Afterwards, for each layer he ascended, he would contemplate for a year, continuously tormenting the envoy of all things. Soon, he reached the 50th floor, his 40th breakthrough. The current envoy of all things had reached the level of a Tier 6 emperor. It was no longer possible to easily trample over it. Hee, kid, are you still my match now? The envoy of all things sneered. Jian Wushuang revealed a faint smile. Without the mastery of the power of life, he indeed only possessed the strength of a Tier 6 emperor. However, things were different now. Universe. Jian Wushuang uttered this word indifferently, and the entire planet dimmed. In a forest, a squirrel was stealthily nibbling on a bright red fruit, looking around and wondering why the day turned dark so quickly. However, soon after, a force descended, and the squirrel transformed into a skeletal frame. The skeleton sank into the ground, turning into a fossil. In the blink of an eye, countless years passed. Everything was changing, but Jian Wushuang remained unaffected. Finally, I can integrate the life power into the universe. From now on, unleashing the one-thought universe won't be so monotonous. Jian Wushuang raised his hand, and the heavens and earth returned to their original state. The squirrel in the forest paused, then dropped the fruit and ran away. Jian Wushuang sensed everything around him. The one-thought universe had shrunk to the size of a palm, binding the envoy of all things. Outside, in the hall of the Beiwang Tower, tens of thousands of strong individuals had gathered here. They anxiously awaited the changes in rankings, but their focus was solely on Jian Wushuang. Dao Lord Jian Wushuang broke through to the 40th level. Even Wan Yen, who was initially calm, became excited. He knew that Jian Wushuang had the strength to reach the 40th level, but what happened beyond that was unknown. He himself had only reached the 53rd level, and Jian Wushuang had already reached the 50th level, taking a whole year for each breakthrough. This pattern was noticed by everyone. Even the old man guarding this place kept a constant eye on Jian Wushuang. Now, Jian Wushuang's reputation was established. Many inheritors believed that Jian Wushuang hadn't been taken away by someone initially, but had been placed into a special inheritance by Zhenling. Now, after coming out, his strength had reached an unimaginable level. Dao Lord possessed the battle power of a Tier 6 emperor. They did not even dare to think about it. Swish! Jian Wushuang, ranking first, once again transformed, breaking through the 41st level. It's still within a year, someone exclaimed. They were on the verge of collapse. Jian Wushuang broke through right on time every time. But what happened inside during that year? Some speculated that Jian Wushuang had a special temporal treasure that allowed him to pass through at will. Some even reported to the higher-ups in the Elder Palace, but the response received was that there were no changes in the Beiwang Tower. It was just that Jian Wushuang's strength was too formidable. The news of Jian Wushuang breaking through the 41st level spread once again. This time, old Taoist Qingniu, one of the 3 palace masters of the Elder Palace, came in person. He faintly ranked first among the 3 palace masters, holding the pinnacle of power in the Elder Palace. Many people, upon seeing him, hurriedly went forward to pay their respects. Whether it was the inheritors or the native emperors of the 4 great secret realms, they all highly respected this old Taoist with a kind face. Wu's figure appeared here at some point. He deliberately concealed his aura, and only Qingniu noticed his presence. Wu's, my friend. I heard that Jian Wushuang still has some connection with you? Qingniu casually remarked. If that were true, he needed to invest early. Jian Wushuang had such potential. He would undoubtedly become a significant figure in the Qixin Temple in the future. It was wise to curry favor with him in advance. However, Wu's paid no attention to this. He understood the other's thoughts but sneered inwardly. Only he could get on Jian Wushuang's boat. The rest shouldn't even think about it. Once that plan was set in motion, these people would go after Jian Wushuang. Trying to please him now would be of no use. When the plan was ready, Zhenling coordinated with it and directly commanded them to hunt down Jian Wushuang. These individuals, it seemed, would likely add insult to injury. After the completion of the plan, Jian Wushuang naturally wouldn't harbor any goodwill towards these people. Instead, having been involved in the plan and having preemptively aligned with Jian Wushuang, he would be remembered for his favor when Jian Wushuang reached the summit. Palace Master, I've only had a few chance encounters with Jian Wushuang. We're not acquainted, Wu Zhuo replied. Old Taoist Qingyou paused for a moment. He knew Wu Zhuo well. Before entering the Qixin temple, he had a notorious reputation and was subdued by a Zhenling, obedient and submissive. Later, he clung to Zhenling's thigh, but now he seemed confused and had actively distanced himself from Jian Wushuang. There must be some conspiracy. Could it be that he wants me to voluntarily dispel this notion? Qingyou thought inwardly, then revealed a strange smile and said, Jian Wushuang's talent is outstanding. He must be someone favored by Zhenling. After he comes out, my elder palace will show support. If others disagree, I can act independently. Upon hearing this, Wu Zhuo inwardly cursed. Qingyou had said all the favorable words. Clearly, the other party didn't believe that he had no special relationship with Jian Wushuang. This was a message for him to convey to Jian Wushuang. Unfortunately, Wu Zhuo was no longer so foolish. He wouldn't be manipulated by these old guys. What's the use of treasures? How many treasures could these old guys produce? He had invested all his worth in Jian Wushuang. Did these people have such determination? Brother Qingyou, you better convey these words to Jian Wushuang yourself. Wu Zhuo said and immediately left. He had no positive feelings towards these palace masters now. He had done both good and bad things, gained nothing in the end, and had to face blame every time with them pushing him forward. As for Emperor Lu Hua, who had a life-and-death relationship with him and helped him become a palace master, there was no news from him now. No one could be relied upon. It was always Jian Wushuang that one had to rely on. When Jian Wushuang rose, everything improved. Zhenling was always Zhenling. There would inevitably come a day when the old would give way. Once a suitable successor appeared, Zhenling would have to step down. At that time, Jian Wushuang would be the one in charge, doing whatever he pleased. The Elder Palace, the 4 great temples, they all belonged to him. Wu Zhuo was having grand dreams, directly reaching the origin source sea of the Qixin Temple. Lord Zhenling, Jian Wushuang has broken through again. He now has the battle power of a Tier 6 emperor. Wu Zhuo came specifically this time to sing praises of Jian Wushuang. Zhenling blinked, understanding Wu Zhuo's little scheme. With a hint of wickedness in his smile, Zhenling said, since that's the case, he deserves a reward. But recently, as you know, all the treasures are with Zhu Yi. It's not easy to mobilize them. So, this time you can go on my behalf and give something to Jian Wushuang. Say it's from you. I'll make it up to you later. Whether it's more or less, it's the thought that counts. Anyway, there's a 90% chance that the future of the Qixin Temple belongs to him. Zhenling dug another big hole for Wu Zhuo. As for whether Jian Wushuang was the successor, he had long had the answer in his heart. The Universe Master was most suitable for Jian Wushuang. The positions of the 3 major godheads could be determined. As for the successor of the Qixin Temple, in the chaos before creation, anything was possible. But it would never be Jian Wushuang. Originally, according to his intention, not to mention the position of a divine master, he wouldn't even give the inheritance of the Universe Master to Jian Wushuang. However, now it seemed that, with the dissipation of the evil aura around Jian Wushuang, a position as a divine master could be arranged. This also justified Jian Wushuang's potential. As for the position of Qixin, he had other plans. At the moment, whether it was the outstanding inheritors like Shang, Hu Qing, or Jian Wushuang among the extraordinary heirs, or the inheritors of special origin sources, they were not within his considerations. The one inheriting the position of Qixin must have a clean foundation. He feared that the predicted person who inherited the position of Qixin would lead Qixin Temple to its demise. Jian Wushuang was very likely that person. Despite having hope in Hu Qing initially, he refrained from placing bets on her after noticing changes in her timeline and future, fearing the uncertainties. In the Grave God Mountain, there were several practitioners who had achieved perfection in the ultimate Tao, each concealing their strength, yet all extremely powerful. They could rival even the Tier 5 emperors. He could freely examine the timelines of these individuals and held high expectations for them. In the future, if any unforeseen events occurred, these individuals would be reliable. Behind Jian Wushuang, there were people who nurtured him as an inheritor, only to be eventually used as pawns by others. Jinling was not foolish. Only Wu Zhuo remained consistently straightforward. Wu Zhuo hesitated. Most of his treasures had been given to Jian Wushuang, and the remaining ones, mostly the ones he used, were insufficient to provide more. If he invested further, he would have to sell his own treasures. However, as Jinling had stated, the future belonged to Jian Wushuang with a 90% probability, which was 20 higher than the last time he was informed. He gritted his teeth and reluctantly agreed. If necessary, he would make a fortune while Jian Wushuang was at the Beiwang Tower. It was chaotic there, and even the temple itself was too busy to notice him. But he couldn't be too stingy. Since Jian Wushuang had not yet achieved integration with the Tao, he would need treasures for that. Wu Zhuo decided to find treasures based on this criterion. If there were none in the mortal realm, he would use treasures to exchange with Zhu Yi. Thinking this, Wu Zhuo didn't dare to delay any longer. He quickly withdrew and had Jinling teleport him to the mortal realm. The crucial point was that no matter how many treasures he spent, Jinling would ultimately compensate him. He would gain both fame and fortune. Even if he sold his own innate treasures, he could later ask Jinling for even more powerful ones. No matter how you calculate it, he never suffered a loss. Watching Wu Zhuo leave, he muttered to himself, "Why did I take such a foolish disciple in the first place?" Jinling shook his head, choosing not to dwell on that. The inheritances of the three divine masters, chaos and all things, all had their fates decided. There was also one originally intended for Hu Qing, but since Hu Qing went to the Earth realm, he became increasingly unreadable, leading to the abandonment of that plan. On Jian Wushuang's side, he at least knew some details. However, with Hu Qing's timeline becoming blurred, he could no longer see clearly. Moreover, even before Fuego's resurrection, he felt a threat emanating from Hu Qing, something that seemed off. Now, he increasingly felt the severity of that feeling, surpassing the threat Fuego posed to him. With the success of this plan, after eliminating Fuego, he would have to rethink his approach to Hu Qing. Eliminate him? It was a bit regrettable, but without getting rid of Hu Qing, he wouldn't find peace for a day. What was originally within his control now turned into a mess. Within a small universe, unexpectedly, so many extraordinary individuals were born. Previously, it was thought that the original universe created numerous powerful cultivators because it feared the true master, willing to exhaust its own origin source to create such formidable practitioners. Now, this reasoning seemed less convincing. Ultimately, everything could be blamed on Hu Qing. When opening the Three Kings Court, one significant benefit was to ensure Hu Qing's successful integration with the Tao. This ensured the appearance of an emperor who had perfected the ultimate Tao. But now, after cultivation, it only intensified his fear. Instead, he had to be eliminated. Originally, he thought he had gained, but in the end, he was the one who suffered the most. Jinling continued to contemplate, holding onto the chess pieces. Meanwhile, chaos erupted in the land. While there was already the madman Broly, recently, a shameless Supreme Peak expert appeared, specifically robbing Tier 6 emperors. Even Tier 5 emperors were not spared later. This led many forces to quickly seek refuge in the Qixin Temple, receiving its protection. This time, Wu Zhuo had unintentionally done a good deed for the temple. The temple naturally did not care, but Wu Zhuo's name and image were publicized. This led all the emperors in the land to curse Wu Zhuo for his shamelessness. Even Tier 5 emperors were not exempt. Wu Zhuo, however, paid no attention to this. After all, he gained a lot. At the same time, he received good news from Jian Wushuang. Now, he had achieved a breakthrough to the 43rd level. In the Beiwang Tower. This time, Jian Wushuang did not easily suppress the envoy of all things and could only fight with all his might. "Senior, give me a chance. I don't want to torture you forever, but I have my own difficulties." Jian Wushuang stood there, explaining. However, the envoy of all things did not listen at all. With Tier 6 top-tier strength, Jian Wushuang was no match. Give you a chance? Have you given me a chance to speak? The envoy of all things sneered. Jian Wushuang sighed and said, Then I have to offend you. His current strength was indeed inferior to the opponent's, but he had a method to continuously trap the opponent and then contemplate here indefinitely. However, by doing so, he would completely offend the other party to death. Even though he couldn't defeat the opponent, it was still easy to trap them. He now realized that the power of life had some resistance to killing, but it could be integrated with the killing of the sword, enhancing his actual combat power. The 9th level of the sword Dao was still unable to break through, but a prototype had emerged in his mastery of the ultimate technique. Life and killing. He now had to create a more powerful ultimate technique to enhance his combat power. Otherwise, he would be using a treasure as a fire stick. To use strength wisely on the blade. Jian Wushuang understood this principle. Sitting cross-legged on a rock in a river, Jian Wushuang occasionally saw some evolving fish swimming by. With a thought, his thought power transformed the golden sword into a fish, circling around him. Something is missing. Jian Wushuang frowned. Life and killing were opposites. If fused into an ultimate technique, tremendous power would be born. The more opposing the forces merged, the greater the effect. Perhaps he could take advantage of this opportunity to break through in one go. By cultivating both origin paths to perfection, he could eventually achieve unity. However, things were not as simple as he thought. The fusion of the two forces resulted in a violent power that directly shook him with internal injuries, tearing even his origin source apart. Spitting out a mouthful of golden blood, Jian Wushuang came to a halt. No, the extreme Dao has already reached the 9th level. The disparity between the sword Dao and the extreme Dao is quite significant. They are inherently opposite, and to merge them, a balance must be found. Right now, the gap is a bit too much. Jian Wushuang shook his head and ultimately gave up. Exhaling deeply, he regained his composure, preparing for a battle against the envoy of all things. Retreating wasn't in his nature. Even if he couldn't win, he had to give it a try. Whoosh! The one thought universe to start expanding, releasing the suppressed envoy of all things. Inside, the envoy of all things flexed his wrist and angrily exclaimed, Kid, you've really angered me. I won't let you lose so easily. Is that so? Jian Wushuang responded indifferently. He truly didn't believe it. A top-level Tier 6 Emperor was nothing. He had already trapped him with the One Thought Universe. The One Thought Universe possessed the power of life, not death. Jian Wushuang could feel that aura. It was alive. Die for me! The envoy of all things struck mercilessly from the beginning, claiming not to let Jian Wushuang lose too quickly, but his actions showed no restraint. He had already decided. Either kill Jian Wushuang or be killed, forcing the other party to leave quickly. 6 sharp curved knives slashed through the air. Controlling the One Thought Universe, Jian Wushuang tried to suppress the opponent's strength as much as possible. However, when facing that blade, he couldn't help but be surprised. Too strong. The sharp aura was much stronger than his sword Dao, not even in the same league. Come forth! Jian Wushuang pointed, and the Cloud Decision sword behind him emitted a resounding sword cry, erupting forcefully. This was the first time he had used the Juyun sword, imbued with the aura of Emperor Juyun. Its formidable power surpassed even that of the envoy of all things. You actually have this sword. The envoy of all things was also taken aback. The shadow left by Emperor Juyun back then was not much weaker than Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's expression was equally astonished. Once the power within the Juyun sword was triggered, it surpassed his own sword Dao. Unexpectedly, just containing the aura of Emperor Juyun could make it this powerful. With one sword strike, he directly shattered the first sharp knife. However, with the second one, he couldn't manage. Jian Wushuang could only manifest his Dao image, relying on the beast god weapon and divine body to confront it head-on. This punch represents life. Jian Wushuang roared as he threw a punch. It was a punch accompanied by the power of life. The second sharp knife he also broke. 6 sharp knives, 2 of them shattered. He had run out of means to make a significant impact. The thought that the power of the universe could weaken the opponent and enhance himself had its limitations. Facing the subsequent attacks of the sharp knives, Jian Wushuang directly ignited the origin source. Those strong individuals who had come out of the Beiwang Tower would go to convalesce in the Fenyang Island Valley. It was because when they challenged the Beiwang Tower, they would ignite their origin source. In general, burning the origin source was something done only when one was desperate. Unless absolutely necessary, nobody would burn their own origin source or divine body. However, because of the precious land on Fenyang Island that could quickly restore the origin source and divine body, it directly triggered a wave of burning origin source and divine body. Of course, not everything was burned. There was a price to be paid. The points obtained in the Beiwang Tower, along with the number of times one comprehended the origin source of all things, were extremely precious. If one failed to break through in one attempt, even if they cultivated to become the universe master, they would at most gain dozens of opportunities for comprehension. Of course, universe masters couldn't be so mediocre that they couldn't break through even once. But some individuals, while exceptional in the outside world, were nothing more than outstanding individuals in the Elder Palace. To become stronger, one had to pay a price. Burning the origin source to pursue a breakthrough, that was the cost. Opportunities for comprehension were meant to be seized. Points were used to exchange for tokens and the power of all things. The things that could be exchanged for points were only these 2. One token was 100 points, and it could be used 10 times. It would shatter after 10 uses. Some people got stuck on a certain level, trying countless times without success, ultimately preventing them from entering the Beiwang Tower again. These individuals would then seek to buy tokens from others, and sometimes a token would be traded at astronomical prices, fetching hundreds of billions of cubic godstones for a single token. As for the power of all things, it was 1 strand for 100 points. The complete origin source of the universe had the ability to regenerate and wasn't afraid of others redeeming it. Jian Wushuang glanced at his points. This time, it seemed that the Beiwang Tower was going to go bankrupt. The strength on this level was too formidable. He was simply not a match. After burning his origin source, a sharp knife broke through in front of him. He was already powerless against the 3 more knives behind it. It directly pierced through his body, and his divine body shattered with a thunderous explosion. With the power of life, he could instantly restore his divine body and origin source. However, the sharp aura contained in the knives left him no time to even blink, directly killing him. Phew! L still lost. Jian Wushuang didn't feel regret. It was just that this sense of despair was even more profound than when others spoke of it. To defeat the opponent, he probably needed at least to reach the 9th level of the Sword Dao and then create his own peak mastery. He had plenty of ways to improve, no need to stay in the Beiwang Tower like everyone else. In fact, with this determination, it was better to try the Demon Sound Mountain. The power of the origin source was indeed powerful, but one could only comprehend it for a day at a time, which was too short. It wasn't of much help to others. However, Jian Wushuang's number of attempts was a bit too many, to the point that he could comprehend for over 100 million years without running out. And he still had points. He wondered if these points could buy the entire strand of the power of all things. Since the rules were set, Jinling shouldn't play any tricks. Jian Wushuang was in a dilemma. He debated whether to exchange his points for the origin source of all things, fearing that it might be the only way to acquire the Beiwang Tower. However, if he purchased the tower, he would exhaust his opportunities for enlightenment. It seemed like a bit of a loss. Contemplating his options, Jian Wushuang sought a compromise, wondering if he could convert those enlightenment opportunities into something tangible. But he was overly optimistic. He couldn't calculate the exact number of opportunities, but the emperor who guarded this place had more than enough. Now, discussions were underway in the upper chambers of the Elder Palace. They deliberated on who should report to Jinling or whether reporting was necessary at all. After all, the Beiwang Tower was a supreme universe treasure, with a complete origin source of all things, a rarity. Although individuals couldn't possess such treasures privately, The countless divine stones and treasures collected annually from the Beiwang Tower were like a treasure trove, something akin to an annual windfall. How could they possibly hand it over to Jian Wushuang? Even if they agreed, Zhenling might not be willing. "I'll think we should talk to Jian Wushuang first and make him understand our predicament," suggested Emperor Lu Hua. He didn't want to offend Jian Wushuang and certainly didn't want to lose this treasure trove. Though old Taoist Qingyo also held Jian Wushuang in high regard, when it came to his own interests, he chose the latter. Interests outweighed everything. TSK, Lu Hua, considering that Jian Wushuang seems to belong to your faction, it's quite fitting for you to handle this, sneered the sword god Chang Feng. He initially had no strong opinions about Jian Wushuang, thinking of him as a formidable Dao lord but not one he had to go out of his way to recruit. Looking at Jian Wushuang's performance in the Northern Watchtower, he had no choice but to lower his head and make amends. The relationship between Jian Wushuang and Wu Zhuo was delicate. He felt like he was always a step behind, but now it was the perfect opportunity. Now it seemed he could have Lu Hua go talk to Jian Wushuang, avoiding any offense while making Lu Hua the villain. Qingyo's eyes shifted, understanding Chang Feng's intention. Both remained silent, awaiting Lu Hua's agreement. Emperor Lu Hua was taken aback. At this moment, he never expected someone would still be scheming against him. The one with a good relationship with Jian Wushuang was Wu Zhuo, not him. On this matter, there's no rush. Brother Wu Zhuo is in the Earth realm. We'll discuss it together when he returns. Emperor Lu Hua passed this difficult problem to Wu Zhuo. With Wu Zhuo absent, no one could refute. Qingyo calmly said, "Brother Lu Hua, this matter can't be delayed." Yes, Jian Wushuang's advancement is rapid, requiring many treasures. We can't keep dragging this on. If the temple learns about it, they might think our elder palace can't keep its word. Chang Feng's sword god added, fueling this made Lu Hua very embarrassed. He wanted to overturn the table and fight these two. If you want to talk, go talk yourselves. If they insist on dragging him into this, and they force him into a corner, he might as well agree to give Jian Wushuang the complete origin source. Then, Beiwang Watchtower would be nothing but an empty shell. Let's see how they would explain to Zhenling. They wouldn't dare report this matter to Zhenling. No one wanted Zhenling to bear the blame. They had witnessed Zhenling's methods. If they handed this problem to Zhenling, and Zhenling couldn't wash their hands of it, their elder palace might be dismantled. Don't forget, this elder palace was established single-handedly by Zhenling. It's just some precious treasures. Even if a Dao Lord has a great demand, it's not a big deal. I suggest we first offer some treasures to Jian Wushuang. When Wu Zhuo returns, let Hall Master Wu Zhuo discuss with Jian Wushuang. Emperor Lu Hua firmly stated, showing no intention of personally approaching Jian Wushuang. Seeing this, Qingyo and Chang Feng didn't have much else to say. I've been contemplating recently, and I'm afraid I'll have to seclude myself for a period. Lu Hua, handle these matters. Qingyo slowly stood up and left directly, clearly indicating an intention to avoid involvement. Chang Feng frowned. He had originally planned to use this excuse, but unexpectedly, Qingyo took the initiative. By the way, there's a batch of, or in the extreme north mines that needs to be transported here. Since Wu Zhuo is not here, I'll personally make a trip. Taking advantage of the situation, Chang Fin found an excuse and left as well. Now, Emperor Lu Hua was the only one sitting in the main seat, unsure of what to do. Too small-minded, too limited in vision. Emperor Lu Hua has seen through the tricks of these two. Did they really think they could get away by hiding? That was too naive. Jian Wushuang was no fool. At this moment, Jian Wushuang had just left Beiwang Tower. Inside the Grand Hall, many people were waiting for Jian Wushuang's appearance. Seeing Jian Wushuang teleported out, many people looked at him with envy. However, among these people, there were very few who had any real connection with Jian Wushuang. Wushuang brother, long time no see. As soon as we meet, you give us a huge surprise. A refined female emperor walked out, actively greeting Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang took a closer look, recognized the person before him, and without any arrogance, calmly said, It's a bit sudden. Taoist Ling Shuang. The person in question was Taoist Ling Shuang, whom Jian Wushuang had encountered several times on the original planet Alpha 9. Now, she had become Emperor Ling Shuang, a peak-level Tier 4 emperor. Back then, her potential was much stronger than Tian. The potential was, after all, just potential. To transform it into strength required a fair share of opportunities and determination. And clearly, she wasn't as adept in this regard as Tian. After chatting with a few acquaintances, Jian Wushuang departed the area with Dongshang and Wan Yen. Let's go, today, let's have a meeting at my cave mansion. I happen to have some peculiar treasures. Jian Wushuang was in high spirits. He did indeed gain quite a few treasures from Wuxia, some strange flowers and fruits, along with Wu's collection of fine wine. This time, breaking through Beiwang Tower, his gains were substantial. Setting aside the original rewards, his significant breakthrough in the extreme Tao, mastering the power of life, was more important than anything the origin source of the universe. Mere external objects. After becoming the universe master, did he still care about that? Of course, he would still claim what was rightfully his. The points earned this time were enough for him to exchange for the complete origin source of all things. On Fenyang Island, he celebrated with Dongshang and Wan Yen, then sent them outside the valley. He possessed the life power which could actually help them recover, but life power was his trump card, and he wouldn't easily reveal it. Unless it became common knowledge, only then would he assist friends in recovering their divine bodies and origin sources. Recovery in this valley was much faster than elsewhere. Originally, the origin source of all things could rapidly restore divine bodies and origins, not to mention the current life power. Wushuang, you don't need to see us off. Go attend to your matters. Wan Yen smiled. Dongsheng also added, you're quite popular now. There are probably many Tier 6 emperors willing to befriend you. But don't forget us. When you prosper in the future, you must take care of us. Absolutely, Jian Wushuang declared loudly. Having seen off the two individuals, Jian Wushuang's gaze gradually softened. He headed directly towards another core of the Yuanyang Lake. His first destination was the residence of Master Lu Hua, who he was more familiar with. As for the other two palace masters, he wasn't acquainted with them. When he first emerged, the first person he encountered was Emperor Lu Hua, so he was relatively familiar with him. Exchanging the origin source of all things was a significant matter. The emperor who guarded the Beiwang Tower directly instructed him to seek the palace master. He couldn't make the decision alone. Jian Wushuang also understood deep down that the complete origin source of all things was the core of the Beiwang Tower. If he exchanged it and took it away, the Beiwang Tower would likely lose its essence. Alternatively, he could introduce a new and complete universal source into the Beiwang Tower. He sped along the way, not concealing his aura. When he arrived at the island where Emperor Lu Hua resided, the latter was already waiting for him outside. Haha, Jian Wushuang, I thought you'd come looking for me as soon as you left the Beiwang Tower. I didn't expect you to have the leisure to visit. Emperor Lu Hua laughed. But deep down he was surprised. Jian Wushuang gave him a unique feeling, far beyond an ordinary Tier 6 combatant. Tao Lord was like this, and after a successful Tao merge, he would probably directly become a Tier 6 emperor. It wouldn't take long for him to catch up and become a pinnacle expert among the Supreme Peak. Such a character was not to be casually offended. Jian Wushuang respectfully greeted without many words. Now, he was here to exchange treasures, so he couldn't say too much. He needed to keep his composure. Emperor Lu Hua made a gesture of invitation, and the two entered the grand. The more polite the other party, the more uncertain he felt. Last time, the promised complete origin of the universe wasn't obtained. In the end, it was his violation, and not getting it was forgivable, but this time it absolutely could not be easily let go. This time, he had truly broken through the 43rd level. There was no reason for the other party not to give it to him. Unless there was some embezzlement. If that were the case, he would take this matter to Jinling. Anyway, Jinling still needed him. In order to catch the rebels like Fuego, he was going to be used as bait this time. Without some treasures on him, how could it be possible? At least life, Saving treasures couldn't be lacking. If he could devour an origin source of all things, not to mention soaring to the heavens in one step, his life force would probably experience a significant boost. He must not easily compromise. After entering the hall, Emperor Lu Hua sat directly opposite Jian Wushuang. This was to treat each other as equals. Jian Wushuang, you've made quite a splash this time. Now, the entire Elder Palace is spreading your name. It won't be long before everyone in the 4 great secret realms knows you. Emperor Lu Hua still didn't bring up the main matter. He began with some flattery. This wasn't exactly flattery. A Tao Lord with the combat power of a Tier 6 Emperor, and breaking through the 43rd level within Beiwang Tower. If faced against the ordinary Tier 6 Emperors from the 4 great secret realms, he could suppress them. After all, some Tier 6 Emperors in the 4 great secret realms were relatively weak, and Jian Wushuang currently had the strength to compete with them. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly, without any false modesty, and directly got to the point. Palace Master, this time I came to see how much I can exchange for with the points in my hand, in terms of the origin source of all things. As he spoke, he took out the token and pushed it towards Emperor Lu Hua. There was no way to stop him. Sooner or later, they would have to face this. In these days, Emperor Lu Hua had also thought it through. Since he was unwilling to offend and reluctant to let go, he decided to bring the matter directly to the surface, to see how Jian Wushuang intended to resolve it. Of course, he would attribute all of this to Chang Feng and Qingyo. Taking the token with a serious demeanor, he examined it and then drew in a sharp breath, saying, "To be honest, the points here are enough to exchange for all the origin sources in the Beiwang Tower." But Emperor Lu Hua showed a troubled expression. Jian Wushuang knew what he was about to say. It was nothing more than considering the overall situation. For a Tao Lord to monopolize an entire complete origin source was too wasteful. It would be better to wait until one's strength became formidable and then grant such rewards. Jian Wushuang could afford to wait. If he had to wait until he became powerful before receiving these rewards, he would never become powerful. Though his talent was exceptional, it wasn't to the extent where he needed the enhancement of treasures. He could break through casually without needing the boost of artifacts. Since entering the Qixin Temple, his strength had progressed rapidly through 3 stages. The first stage was due to the Chihuang city on the original planet. At that time, his strength soared from a Tao Lord to rivaling an emperor. The second stage was the refinement of his physical body, which led to a direct surge in power. He could now compete with a Tier 2 peak-level emperor. After being seized by Junwang, he improved once again, reaching the level of instantly slaying a Tier 3 emperor. The final stage was entering the Western Sea ruins. Within the 3 Kings' court, his strength was elevated, as he comprehended the transformation Tao ladder, experiencing the transformation of all things anew. Then, in a battle against the first true king, his divine body reached 50,000-fold, comparable to a Tier 6 emperor. Initially, he could reach the level of a Tier 6 emperor because of his divine body. Now, not only could Jian Wushuang's divine body rival that of a Tier 6 emperor, but even his origin source had reached this level. At this point, he truly attained the combat power of Tier 6. Reaching this stage wasn't solely based on his potential or perseverance, but rather on possessing immense opportunities and treasures. The refinement of his physical body, swallowing the universe origin source, would have been hopeless without the support of Shan Jun. In the earthly realm, without the opportunities from the 3 Kings' court, he wouldn't have reached this point. Treasures were indeed crucial. Knowledge and wealth were indispensable. Knowledge represented profound studies. Now he could create his own without relying on the universe's inheritance or cosmic secret techniques. Wealth was absolutely essential. He didn't forget the recent financial difficulties he faced. Emperor Lu Hua could see Jian Wushuang's determination, but he hesitated to voice it. In the end, he had to make a temporary adjustment and said, "The significance of the origin source of all things is indeed considerable. However, 1 is 1 and 2 is 2. We are pleased that you can achieve this. I believe Lord Jinling is even happier. The appearance of a talent like you in the Qixin Temple makes us proud. You can rest assured about the origin source of all things." When the other 2 palace masters return, one will fully support you. Thank you, Palace Master. Jian Wushuang planned to obtain the origin source of all things today. However, there needed to be a precise time for it. Palace Master Lu Hua, my realm has just broken through. I need many treasures. Please understand. Jian Wushuang requested. The other party gave him face and he would reciprocate, as long as there were no false promises. In the future, the Qishan temple would be under his control. If someone offended him, he wouldn't show them any good intentions. Lu Hua also understood the implications and handed Jian Wushuang a mustard seed. Feel free to mention any treasures you lack. Although decisions in the Elder Palace are not mine alone, personally, I can support you. Given your relationship with Wuxia, we are on the same side. Please don't be polite with me. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate and accepted the offer directly. With a glance of his thought power, he found the contents quite satisfying. The treasures inside were worth at least 100,000 cubic universe crystals, and it seemed the other party had truly spared no expense. Thank you, Palace Master. Regarding the matter of the origin source, it's best to seal the agreement within 1,000 years. Jian Wushuang added a deadline before implementing the plan. If he couldn't obtain the origin source by then, he would seek Wuxia's help. Wuxia had a way to contact Jinling. Though such an approach might strain their relationships, it was unnecessary as long as a peaceful resolution was achievable. Having secured the treasures, Jian Wushuang felt a temporary stability. Lu Hua also breathed a sigh of relief, fearing Jian Wushuang might jeopardize the plan. Humph, these fools. Let's see how long they can hide. After seeing off Jian Wushuang, Emperor Lu Hua's expression turned cold. His initial support for Jian Wushuang was not insincere. Seeing Jian Wushuang, the potential successor of the Qishan temple, he genuinely leaned towards supporting him. The future inheritor of the Qishan temple might indeed be Jian Wushuang. Although the current benefits were substantial, they were not greater than the heavens. Don't forget, all of this was bestowed upon them by Jinling. Everything depended on the will of Jinling. Actions like those of Qingniu and Changfeng, unwilling to let go yet unwilling to offend Jian Wushuang, were simply the most foolish approach. Fortunately, Lu Hua was adaptable. After seeing Jian Wushuang again, he sensed that something was amiss and made a clear choice. This time, pushing him out to negotiate with Jian Wushuang was actually a good move. It allowed him to take advantage of the opportunity to express goodwill towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, you must hasten your Dao merge. Emperor Lu Hua looked forward to Jian Wushuang's success in Dao merge, knowing that his status would inevitably rise. By then, outsiders wouldn't be able to interfere. Jian Wushuang returned directly to Yuanyang Island. Since he couldn't obtain the origin source of all things at the moment, he decided to comprehend it here first. Just a few days after his departure, he reappeared. The sororist Manvdiol. Is he breaking through again? Some eyes stared at Jian Wushuang with amazement. Some Tier 6 emperors could slightly sense Jian Wushuang's aura and said, probably not. His aura seems unchanged. Such a transcendent Dao Lord is beyond our speculation. Let's just go in and focus on our own cultivation. Jian Wushuang directly found the emperor guarding this place and asked, Senior, I want to comprehend the origin source of all things. The emperor guarding the area was a Tier 6 emperor with extraordinary strength. He used to be indifferent to everything, but upon seeing Jian Wushuang, he immediately revealed a gentle smile and said, standing up, give me the token. I've received orders from Palace Master Lu Hua. You can comprehend freely from now on without needing my permission. Thank you. Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised. He hadn't expected Palace Master Lu Hua to be so courteous. Although he had countless opportunities for comprehension, and the origin source of all things belonged to him, there was no need for such a casual approach. It seemed that within 1,000,000 years, he indeed had a chance to take possession of this origin source of all things. Now he decided to comprehend it. When he obtained it later, he could directly assimilate it. After receiving the token, Jian Wushuang stepped into the teleportation array. After a moment of change, he reappeared in a large hall. The hall was enormous, more like a paradise. A majestic origin source of all things roamed with the wind. Initially, Jian Wushuang thought that facing the origin source of the universe, he would be somewhat suppressed. However, when facing the origin source of all things, he unexpectedly felt a gentle sensation. The origin source of all things had some overlap with the life power in his body, but the degree of overlap was not too high. Jian Wushuang walked forward slowly, wanting to reach out and touch it. He found that when his flesh touched the all things, it directly fused with the origin source of all things. This origin source? He felt shocked in his heart. Fusing with all things? No wonder he was on the verge of a breakthrough. There was probably a significant connection between this and the origin source of all things. He attempted to infuse the life force within him into it, only to be devoured. Jian Wushuang was initially astonished. However, he soon discovered that after the fusion of the life power with the origin source of all things, some changes occurred. Sensitive to the power of life, he, within the origin source of all things, detected a breath of life. Life here? Jian Wushuang hastily retreated, realizing that the surviving life within seemed formidable. So strange. He dared not approach to comprehend its mysteries any further. The life here seemed to crave the life power within him. This shouldn't be. Jian Wushuang was puzzled. He then recalled that this place was arranged by a Zhenling, who controlled the Qishan temple and possessed the abilities of a universe master. How could he not sense life incubating within the origin source of all things? Or perhaps Zhenling knew and even placed it there? If that were the case, the origin source of all things might slip away from him. No, one have to go in and take a look. This origin source of all things was his possession. He couldn't let others enjoy it while he slept beside it. Jian Wushuang exhaled, and a clone emerged, directly entering the origin source of all things. The clone lacked the life power but contained the power of all things. Being similar, even entering within, he faced no rejection. Jian Wushuang's main body sat close to the teleportation array. In case of any unforeseen circumstances, he could escape at the first opportunity. After his clone entered the interior, he discovered that the interior of the universe origin source was, in fact, a nascent cosmic space. Within this space, the true essence of time was already present. However, the essence of time had not yet fully condensed. In a process of transformation, all things converged, giving rise to the universe, and then time solidified, ultimately giving birth to life. And this universe was the manifestation of the origin source of all things, making the space within exceptionally stable. This was the perfection of space, and Jian Wushuang marveled at what his eyes beheld. If only his own space could be so perfect. However, reaching that day would likely require a long journey. He was now on the path of a Tao Lord, nearing its completion. All that remained was the perfection of the ultimate sword Tao. Without pausing, Jian Wushuang proceeded directly toward the source of life. He wanted to see what kind of life had been nurtured inside. Even his life power might be plundered. The universe's space wasn't vast. With a flicker, Jian Wushuang arrived at its deepest point. It was a secret realm. The fact that a secret realm could be nurtured within this cosmic space indicated that its owner had once been incredibly powerful. Only through a breakthrough in time could a black hole evolve into a secret realm. There, everything turned into the plunder of the black hole, which is why so many powerful beings continuously poured into the secret realms of the universe. Jian Wushuang stood above the secret realm at this moment, the aura of life getting closer. What exactly is hidden here? He was becoming impatient. After all, it was just a clone, and there was nothing to fear. He plunged straight in. Upon entering the secret realm, he discovered that the space and time here were even more stable. Complete space, vast time, and life? Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed suddenly. He gained a rough understanding of the hierarchy of life. His current life force could, at most, be utilized on himself. But here, life could be nurtured. What did that signify? Life was born from the origin source of a universe master. This probably marked a unique path, unprecedented like his own. This kind of origin had its peculiarities. It surpassed those powerful beings following predetermined paths in realms where it shouldn't exist. Although Jian Wushuang didn't know much about the realm of the Universe Master, after observing numerous universe origin sources, he had some understanding. In ordinary universe origin sources, the descent of the true meaning of time would make one a formidable universe master. In the origin source of all things, if there was the true meaning of time, it proved that the original master of all things was already among the supreme universe masters. However, in his secret realm it was more than just a complete space. It had its own mysteries. The embodiment of the true meaning of time and a stable flow of time could give birth to life. This is quite exaggerated. It has already surpassed the rules of the universe master. Jian Wushuang swallowed hard. He, too, a Tao Lord, not only transcended in spatial dimensions but also bypassed the true meaning of time, mastering the power of life. Although the current power of life was still weak, unable to be infused into the origin source at all, once his spatial origin source gained the recognition of the true meaning of time, he could directly infiltrate the power of life into it. By that time, he would be able to ascend, directly surpassing those conventional universe masters. Jian Wushuang's hands were trembling. Seeing this scene, he felt well prepared for his own future, a very complete path. This trip was not in vain. The origin source of all things, Beiwang Tower. Indeed, it was a great blessing for him. He increasingly yearned to obtain this complete origin source of all things. I'd like to see what has been nurtured here. Jian Wushuang lifted the natural rules arranged in this place with his hands. The rules of the universe covered the truth here. If he hadn't mastered the power of life, he wouldn't have been able to detect life incubating here at all. Without the power of all things, he couldn't enter it either. In either case, he wouldn't be able to come in. As the rule power dissipated, Jian Wushuang's eyes penetrated into it. With just one glance, cold sweat broke out on his back. The life contained inside made his whole body tremble. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate at all, instantly dissolving his clone. At the very first moment, his true self entered the teleportation array. Phew! Seeing the figure in front of him moving, Jian Wushuang finally relaxed. The mighty emperor reigning over this domain was somewhat surprised. He hadn't expected Jian Wushuang to emerge so quickly. The flow of time inside was the same as the outside world, and not even a day had passed since Jian Wushuang entered. Each opportunity for comprehension lasted only a day. Most people couldn't grasp it in time, but someone like Jian Wushuang, a Tao Lord defying the heavens, seemed indifferent. After all, with numerous points in hand, he could easily afford to purchase the origin source of all things. Your Lordship Jian Wushuang, you've completed your comprehension so quickly. Indeed, extraordinary. A black-robed old man flattered, followed by a smile. Jian Wushuang at this moment was like a startled bird, not willing to stay a moment longer. He nodded and left directly. After leaving Beiwang Tower, he headed straight for the Demon Sound Mountain. Upon reaching the Demon Sound Mountain, he headed directly to the demon ceiling space at the mountain's summit. With Wuxia absent, he could only seek out Divine General Mayin. Buzz! The figure of the Demon Sound Divine General was still sitting cross-legged in the demon ceiling space. Jian Wushuang, upon arriving, finally breathed a sigh of relief. Lord Divine General, I wish to see Jinling. Jian Wushuang stated the reason without hesitation. Divine General Mayin was quite surprised and asked, Is it for the origin source of all things? Yes, this matter is crucial. Jian Wushuang's gaze was firm. Once that life conceived successfully, it would be challenging for the current Qixin Temple to resist. Moreover, the emitted power was too formidable, surpassing all the experts he had encountered. Even stronger than the Supreme Peak experts. Not even Divine General Mayin, an ultimate emperor among Supreme Peak experts, possessed such terror. On the side of Divine General Mayin, there was some difficulty. He had heard about Jian Wushuang's matter from Dongshang and Wanyan, but he didn't believe that Jian Wushuang could obtain the origin source of all things. The origin source of all things was crucial to Beiwang Tower. It was the pinnacle of the universe. Initially, it was the renowned treasure in the hands of the master of all things, and its power could rival the 9 great beast god weapons. He thought Jian Wushuang had sought him out to demand the origin source of all things, and he felt somewhat reluctant. Even if he communicated with Jinling, he doubted that Jinling would pay him any attention. What Emperor Lu Hua would usually say this time was uttered by the Divine General Mayin. Jian Wushuang, your current strength is insufficient to control the origin source of all things. When you integrate everything through cultivation, everything will fall into place. Don't be anxious for a moment, Divine General Mayin advised. Jian Wushuang remained firm. He insisted on meeting Jinling, because within the origin source of all things, there was an incubating life, a giant egg identical to the one that birthed Jinling. The Three Kings Court was destroyed in this way initially, and he didn't want to see the Qixin Temple become like the Three Kings Court. And now he was in the Qixin Temple. He didn't want the origin source of all things, but he had to bring this matter to the attention of Jinling. The shell of that giant egg had started to crack, and it was estimated that life inside would soon emerge. At that time, everyone would be in deep trouble. He didn't know if this was the plan of Jinling or the conspiracy of Fuego, but it was detrimental to the Qixin Temple either way. This matter was of great significance, and he couldn't speak of it until he saw Jinling. There might be a mole in the Elder's Palace capable of letting the giant egg infiltrate the origin source of all things, and everyone in the Qixin Temple suspected it. He didn't dare to take that risk. Divine General, it's not because of the origin source of all things. There are other matters I need to report to Jinling, Jian Wushuang said tactfully. Divine General Mayin seemed somewhat skeptical, but since Jian Wushuang was so determined and didn't overthink like some of the palace masters in the Elder's Palace, he directly communicated the information to Jinling. On the side of Jinling, they were currently plotting another matter. Upon receiving the message from Divine General Mayin, they glanced at it but didn't pay any attention, because his true body was not in the sea of the universe but at the outer hall guarded by the Xuanwu Temple. Little bastard, I only want 7 envoys of all things, not 700. Are you giving them to me or not? If you don't, I'll smash your head. Jinling glared with small eyes, threatening Xianxia, the temple master. He was currently preparing for matters in the territorial boundaries. The roots of trouble were left behind in the forest of eternal secrets, and now a group of strong individuals was needed to resolve it. While Wuxia, in the heavenly realm, cooperated with Jian Wushuang to lure Fuego, he was not idle either. He aimed to gather a group of envoys of all things to completely eradicate the forest of eternal secrets. Xianxia, the temple master, kept smiling all along but refused to yield, not giving anything. Lord Jinling, the original universe can't withstand the true master for much longer. These envoys of all things cannot be touched. We've already given one, and these days we need to expedite the refinement. There's simply nothing extra. In the 10 great puppet worlds, except for the first world, the other 9 worlds were all refining envoys of all things. Day and night without rest. Ever since the Qixin Temple reawakened, especially within this original universe, Xianxia, the temple master, didn't dare to slack off for a moment, continuously refining envoys of all things. Jinling couldn't leave Qixin Temple. If something unexpected happened outside, they would have to rely on these envoys of all things. Among the heirs, the Universe Master had not appeared, and the Azure Dragon Temple Master was uncooperative, putting all the pressure on him. Jinling gritted his teeth, stood up directly from his seat. How about this, you give me 7 envoys of all things, and I'll give you the Beiwang Tower. How's that? Lord, don't try to trick me. The entire Qixin Temple knows now. Heir Jian Wushuang has broken through more than 40 levels. The Beiwang Tower is not enough to compensate for it. As for the origin source of all things, it's not something I can decide. Although Xianxia, the temple master, was not in the 4 great secret realms, he still had many informants. Many things he knew almost instantly. Jinling slapped his head, snorted coldly, and turned around, walking away. Not enough manpower. His true body had to stay to deal with Fuego. He couldn't easily move. Except for the Azure Dragon, the other 4 great temples couldn't break free. The critical moment arrived as Azure Dragon had been dispatched to the human realm secret realm to secretly observe Huqing. Upon his return to the origin source sea, he sensed a looming danger emanating from the heavenly realm. Although he couldn't grasp the specific aura, deduction was within his capabilities. It's related to Fuego. Zhenling immediately stood up, initiating constant surveillance of all movements in the heavenly realm. Inside the Elder Palace, cracks started to appear on the giant egg lurking within the origin source of all things. Life within the giant egg had long developed consciousness. Naturally, it also witnessed Jian Wushuang. The power of life. Frolesa, you deceived me. How can there be a formidable wielder of life power in this place? The consciousness within the giant egg struggled. Its horror surpassed that of Jian Wushuang upon seeing it. Xinling, the root cause of calamity within the Qixin temple. He was suppressed in the first prison. Hehe, Phimisa, you've been fooled. That person's strength is quite ordinary. His name is Jian Wushuang, just a Dao Lord. Don't act rashly. I'll send Fuego to capture him. Xinling was quite frustrated. Phimisa was his foundation. As long as it could successfully incubate, it would become a universe master. Although Fuego had revived, his strength could only be maintained at the lowest level of a universe master, making it difficult for him to be effective. To escape from the Qixin temple, he still needed the assistance of Phimisa. When the Three Kings' Court was annihilated, Fuego was suppressed, and he was taken away by the Master of all things, one of the three major divine masters. However, he had left a contingency plan. Originally meant to descend into another timeline's giant egg, he guided it into the Moro space instead, entering the origin source of the Master of all things. Initially, he constantly deceived the Master of all things, urging it to seize control of Phimisa's body, allowing him an opportunity to break free. But before that day arrived, the Moro space fell into desolation. In that desolation, he uncovered the truth. One could only say that the Moro space was extremely unlucky. In order to survive, he willingly entered the Qixin temple. Following Qixin temple, he left that timeline. Now, he wants to leave, but he can't. Zhenling in charge is not swayed by his enticements. He has been constantly thinking of ways to eliminate him. He can only secretly plan to revive Fuego. Fuego was born much earlier than him and is also a top powerhouse among the universe masters. He alone can suppress the three true kings. However, the strength after revival is still somewhat lacking. Fortunately, at this time, Jian Wushuang appeared. Jian Wushuang possesses the power of all things within him, a unique power belonging to them. Not only can it restore Fuego's strength, but it can also bring out Phimisa. Now, the most important thing is to capture Jian Wushuang. Once Jian Wushuang is captured, everything will succeed. However, since Jian Wushuang arrived in the heavenly realm, he has been hiding in the Elder Palace and hasn't come out at all. They have no way because the Elder Palace has Divine General Mayin and the highest level teleportation array. Bai, the Lord of Bai Palace, can arrive at the first moment. In addition to Wuxia and others, suddenly several Supreme Peak powerhouses and Fuego can't handle it. Fuego's current strength was approximately at the level of the 80th floor of the Beiwang Tower, capable of suppressing Divine General Mayin and others, even achieving a kill. However, it required time. Before others could make the kill, the Zhenling had already descended. At that moment, Fuego's self-preservation was uncertain. The pressure from Zhenling was immense, and the pressure from the Xinling was also substantial. Within the Qixin temple, the Ultimate Emperor had already created the cosmic secret technique, and the spatial origin source had reached the universe realm. Perhaps, at any moment, he would ascend to become the universe master. Fuego and the hidden Phimisa within the origin source of all things were enormous threats, continuously exerting significant pressure on the Xinling. This couldn't be prolonged. No one could afford to procrastinate. Gritting his teeth, Xinling endured. But if Jian Wushuang didn't appear soon, he would let Fuego break in, even at the cost of his life, just to bring Jian Wushuang out. Don't act recklessly for now. Even if that Xinling finds you, it won't harm you as long as Fuego regains his peak strength. Everything can be resolved. However, Phimisa found it hard to believe the other's words. After all, he had been deceived into descending into the moro-temporal space, and what was the result? After so many years of incubation, he didn't even have the ability to crack open his egg. If it weren't for the nourishment from the origin of all things, he would have starved to death long ago. It was probably the biggest joke among their giant god clan. Xinling was born, dead in the womb. The giant god clan, a divine race in the starry sky, born as the universe master, unmatched. The descent of a giant egg represented the fall of a spacetime. How powerful! Yet, the result was that the spirits of 3 consecutive giant gods fell into the moro-temporal space, a colossal disgrace. While consoling Phimisa, the deity also informed Fuego to infiltrate the heavenly realm. This time, he wanted to play in the dark. At the same time, he was dispatching members of the Shadow Sect in the heavenly realm. In the Elder Palace, many powerful individuals, including numerous Tier 6 emperors and even a Supreme Peak expert, coincidentally received a message. Among them were also some elders of the Elder Palace. One deeply concealed Supreme Peak figure couldn't hide his astonishment, revealing a formidable appearance. He fixed his gaze on Jian Wushuang and harbored murderous intent. Jian Wushuang, it's you again. On the Demon Sound Mountain, Jian Wushuang walked out alone. Originally, he wanted to inform Xinling, but the latter paid him no attention. He couldn't directly inform Divine General Ma Yin either. I have to act quickly. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. The other party must have sensed him. The giant egg, similar to the one birthing Xinling, might be known to Xinling himself. Perhaps it was a mechanism set up by Xinling. He had to be cautious. Fuego might be involved as well, and if that was the case, there was no need to follow the original plan. 10,000 years. There was still 10,000 years left. Jian Wushuang silently prayed for peace within this period. If Xinling orchestrated this, it would likely provoke the Elder Palace, leading to an imminent great battle. Without absolute certainty, Xinling wouldn't take risks. With his methods, they could infiltrate anywhere. Undoubtedly, there were quite a few powerful individuals implanted Xinling within the Elder Palace, especially among the emperors who entered later. Among them, there were undoubtedly many from the Shadow Sect. Is there a conspiracy in the dark? Leaving Demon Sound Mountain, Jian Wushuang didn't know where to go next. Now, Wuxia is still in the Earth realm, and he has already made contact with the other party. But there has been no response. Yangyuan Island, he dare not go there again. Fenyang Island. He returned to his cave mansion, sitting restlessly. Unstable state of mind. This feeling makes Jian Wushuang very uncomfortable. After sitting quietly for a while, he directly left the cave mansion. He flew towards the deep valley on the island. That valley can quickly heal the origin source and divine body, and can also calm the state of mind. There must be something special about it, very likely related to the power of all things. He happened to explore the truth, maybe there would be unexpected gains. Outside the valley, the emperor who intercepted him last time, upon seeing him, immediately revealed a smile. Jian Wushuang ignored him and directly handed over 100 million cubic godstones. Now, his name has spread throughout the Elder Palace, and his status has risen with it. Who would dare to look down on him? The emperor who had intercepted him before didn't even dare to accept his godstones. Jian Wushuang couldn't be bothered with such people. But he wouldn't show a good face either. What? Look down on my godstones. Jian Wushuang said with a cold face angrily. Take them if you want, otherwise, it's a lack of respect. The old emperor was fearful, directly putting the godstones into his bag. Then he opened the formation. Humph! Jian Wushuang flicked his sleeves and stepped directly into the mountain valley. Inside the valley, a massive stone monument stood tall. Cloud Mist Mountain. Jian Wushuang glanced around, and a sense of calmness emerged in his heart. In that monument, he felt the long-lost heart power. There must be something special inside. A lifeless object containing heart power was too strange. A lifeless object actually contains heart power? Jian Wushuang frowned, speculating in his mind. Could there be life here too? Otherwise, how could there be heart power? Once bitten by a snake, 10 years afraid of a well rope. Now, he felt that everything he saw hid something within. Under the tombstone, rolling heat emanated. It was a natural hot spring. Jian Wushuang descended slowly, where men and women were either sitting together or monopolizing an entire spring on their own. There were dozens of springs here. However, due to the appearance of Beiwang Tower, most of the time, thousands of people came here to recover their divine bodies and origin sources. With so few springs, it wasn't easy to monopolize one. Not only did it require formidable strength, but also a high status. In the Elder Palace, the highest status naturally belonged to the elders. Then came the inheritors and lastly the emperors of the four great secret realms. Some emperors who monopolized a spring were all Tier 6 emperors, and each held a high position in the Elder Palace. Either they were a deputy hall master or a big shot controlling important areas. Strong in power, high in status. Naturally, no one dared to say anything. Jian Wushuang glanced at the turbid spring, finding it hard to step down. Especially those crowded springs, he felt embarrassed to go down. After wandering for a while, he didn't discover anything miraculous. He decided to enter one of the springs, especially the one near the stone monument. That spring was the largest there, and it had a rich power of all things, perfect for restoring the origin source of the divine body. However, those springs were all occupied by some powerful emperors. But the current Jian Wushuang no longer cared about that. It wasn't because he was too extraordinary in Beiwang Tower, so he acted arrogantly. It was more like he would probably leave in a few thousand years. Offending people now or later didn't make much difference to him. He just didn't believe that anyone would dare to attack him here. At most, there might be some verbal threats. But with his current reputation, ordinary people wouldn't dare to threaten him. Even the 3 palace masters would have to give him some face. After Jian Wushuang arrived, many people looked over. The big shots in several core springs also glanced at him. Hall Master, it's Jian Wushuang. I heard that Gong Miaoi has a thing for him. Sitting in the core spring was a Tier 6 peak emperor, also a core member of the Elder Palace. Not only was he of high seniority, but he was also one of the 2 deputy hall masters of the enforcement hall. Considered a capable lieutenant under Wu's was command. Don't spread rumors. It's not good for anyone. The powerful figure sitting in the spring, bare-chested with red eyebrows and hair, like a plague god, warned. The charming woman beside him continued, Hall Master Zhong, Jian Wushuang has an excellent relationship with Lord Wuzhua. Shouldn't we try to win him over? Sure. Let's give you to him then. Jian Wushuang's toes lightly moved, and he directly reached the core. His suspended figure wasn't too high, standing directly above those big shots' heads, which was quite disrespectful. He didn't care. At a distance, he couldn't see the peculiarity of this place. The closer he got, the stronger the feeling the stone monument gave him. His state of mind was not stable but wavering. Even though he was at the 5th level of heart power, just a tiny step away from perfection, he surprisingly couldn't resist. What exactly is this thing? Jian Wushuang became increasingly puzzled. Unfortunately, he couldn't enter the stone monument. It was repelled by the power of rules. He could only step back again, retreat to the grassy area, and from a distance he could calm his state of mind. As he landed on the ground, a charming woman also followed him. Your Highness Wushuang, our hall master invites you to join him for tea. Are you interested? The enchanting woman's eyes were fixed on Jian Wushuang. How mesmerizing! Jian Wushuang shook his head inwardly. Seduction had no effect in this place. It was even less effective on him. He lacked even this bit of composure, a kind of wasted effort. Please! Seeing Jian Wushuang stand up, the enchanting woman reached out to lead him. This time, he certainly wasn't here for tea. Unable to contact Wuzhua at the moment, he intended to inquire from the other party and find out what Wuzhua was up to. Following the enchanting woman, he arrived at the most central spring. The water surface there was calm, with wisps of mist lingering, and the contained Paksuver was thick. Jian Wushuang truly wanted to dig 3 feet into the ground and see what was hidden here, and why it was so special. Now he was curious about everything, as if he wanted to explore and understand everything. He didn't know if it was good or bad. Deputy Hall Master Zhong. Jian Wushuang saw the other party and was also polite. After all, he was asking for a favor. The other's face was hideously terrifying. The Hall of Enforcement in the Northern Territory could make so many people dread. It probably had a lot to do with this plague god. Wuxia was the enforcer, and this person in front of him was probably the executor. A violent aura rushed over, and the other's strength was only strong, not weak, compared to the Deputy Hall Master of the Longevity Hall. Yanqing served tea. Deputy Hall Master Zhong stared at Jian Wushuang, his expression unchanged. Jian Wushuang took the teacup and said, "Thank you." The enchanting woman named Yanqing, however, had a smile in her eyes. "Jian Wushuang, with such fame, you remain humble and composed. No wonder you're among the top inheritors in the Qixin Temple. You're much more likable than Shang." Jian Wushuang didn't expect the other party, looking fierce and ominous, to start by praising him. However, compared to Shang, he still had a long way to go. He lagged behind a lot in the initial stages. He didn't dare to boast, and if Shang were to hear such words, it wouldn't be good. He quickly responded, "I'm just a Dao Lord. How can I compare with Senior Shang?" His current strongest means were only the battle strength of a Tier 6 Emperor. Shang, on the other hand, was a super powerhouse who could compete with Fuego. "You're not inferior to him. He is an ultimate emperor, but you are different. You are an ultimate Dao Lord cultivated by the Qixin Temple. Once you successfully integrate your Dao, you can quickly surpass him," said Hall Master Zhong, shaking his head. In his eyes, Jian Wushuang's potential, once he successfully integrated his path, could at least reach the level of a divine general. As for becoming the universe master, no one dared to be certain. In the past, under the command of Qixin, how many changes occurred among the 18 divine generals? There were not many who could become universe masters. Most perished while attempting to break through. Even figures like Emperor Zhuiyun did not escape that calamity. Becoming a divine general was already commendable. If a universe master doesn't challenge a divine general, they would essentially be invincible. Characters like Divine General Mayin, even if the 3 palace masters of the Elder's Palace were combined, might not necessarily be a match. The disparity in strength was significant. Hall Master Zhong continued, "I've actually seen your information long ago. Young man, don't be hasty." In these words, there was also an implication for Jian Wushuang to let go of his grip on the origin source of all things. Jian Wushuang shook his head inwardly. He had no interest in the origin source of all things now. He wouldn't take it even if it were given to him. Hall Master Zhong, "I wonder where Lord Wuxia has been lately. I have some matters to discuss with him, but I suddenly can't contact him." Jian Wushuang changed the topic and inquired about Wuxia. Hall Master Zhong frowned slightly. He thought Jian Wushuang was seeking Wuxia's help to demand the origin source of all things, and his expression changed. Brother Wuxia handles many affairs daily. He might be involved in important matters. I also don't know his whereabouts. It wasn't deliberate concealment. Wuxia sometimes disappeared for a period, and Master Zhong didn't know where he went. As for the method of contact, he had it, but he wouldn't assist Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang nodded, then chatted with him about some things related to this place, benefiting greatly from the conversation. Indeed, this place is related to the all things. Jian Wushuang's gaze turned to the stone stele. It was a boundary stele and it was a universe treasure. Inside, it also contained a strand of the universe origin source. However, no one was clear about the origin source it contained. No one knew what Dao it belonged exclusively to. Jian Wushuang did not stay in this place for long and directly left the valley. 10,000 years. Jian Wushuang was like an ant on a hot pan. Unable to leave, staying put brought anxiety and fear. He decided to let his main body go to the central hall of Chihuang, while his clone went to seclude himself in the cave mansion. On one hand, he awaited the return of Wuxia or any unforeseen circumstances, so he could escape directly. Fortunately, nothing strange had happened in these years. Beiwang Tower was as bustling as ever, attracting many ultimate Dao lords due to his feat. Among these Dao lords, there were also many powerful individuals. One of them, an ultimate Dao lord, had already reached the 8th level of the ultimate Dao, making him the strongest Dao lord on the Grave God Mountain. Inside the Beiwang Tower, he directly broke through the 20th level, reaching a level comparable to a Tier 4 peak-level emperor. This was within the normal range, still a considerable gap from Jian Wushuang. Although there was a significant difference between the 8th and 9th levels of the ultimate Dao, it wasn't to the extent of being absurd. Now, many people were starting to suspect that Jian Wushuang might have acquired some kind of secret treasure that allowed a sudden surge in his strength. Among the ultimate Dao lords on the Grave God Mountain, there were inheritors who reached the completion stage of the 9th level, but they simply didn't have the time to come to the Beiwang Tower in the Elder Palace. Those figures were only on par with Tier 5 emperors. The gap to Tier 6 was still considerable. Many people speculated. However, Jian Wushuang didn't give the other party a chance to verify. Remaining secluded in the secret chamber of the central hall, practicing alone. He had already told Xiu Huang that as soon as Wu's were returned, he would immediately notify him. At this time, he didn't dare to go to the Earth Realm to find Wu's. Going out now might likely lead to his silence. Jian Wushuang was ready to abandon the plan he had personally set. It was like digging a pit. If the giant egg was a means arranged by Xinling, it might abandon him and silence him directly. He didn't dare to take that risk. He would discuss it with the other party when Wu's were returned. Now he regretted it. In the blink of an eye, thousands of years passed, and everything remained as usual. Jian Wushuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, Wu's, who had disappeared from the Earth Realm, also returned. Jian Wushuang was already waiting for him as soon as he teleported back. Brother Wu's, Jian Wushuang hurriedly approached. He had been waiting for him anxiously. Finally, he waited for the other party to return. Seeing Jian Wushuang, Wu's was somewhat surprised and sensed that Jian Wushuang had something to say. This place had too many prying eyes. It wasn't the time to discuss matters. Let's talk when we go back. All right. Jian Wushuang nodded, and the two of them did not go to Yuanyang Island. Instead, they went directly to the small island where the enforcement hall was located. Entering the central hall directly, followed by setting up a barrier, Jian Wushuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Wu's was shocked when he saw him in such a state. What's happening? Wu's said, could it be that the other party contacted you proactively? Jian Wushuang waved his hand and then replied, it's not that they contacted me proactively, but I discovered a shocking secret. His pupils contracted, and Wu's, seeing this, became tense as well. He set up 3 formations before daring Jian Wushuang to continue. Whatever could make Jian Wushuang so nervous obviously couldn't be a trivial matter. Jian Wushuang revealed everything that happened in Beiwang Tower in one breath. Listening to it, Wu's was astonished, standing up immediately in the hall. Then he paced around in the hall. For this matter, are you sure you haven't told anyone? Wu's asked with uncertainty. Jian Wushuang wiped the sweat from his forehead and, somewhat exhausted, said, haven't even told Divine General Ma'in, let alone others. That's good. It's easy then. If you've only approached Divine General Ma'in, even if there are spies in the Elder Palace, they shouldn't be able to guess. What we're worried about now is whether the other party already knows that you've discovered the secret there. Indeed, Xinling had discovered it. Over the past thousands of years, not only was Xinling frightened, but even the giant egg in the origin source, which dared to quietly absorb the power of all things for its own needs, was now terrified. Previously, it could absorb the power of the origin source discreetly, but now that it had been discovered, it didn't dare to venture out of the secret realm. Jian Wushuang was afraid, but the other party was even more terrified. On this point, Wu's, as a bystander, observed even more. He soon discovered that something was amiss. You've spotted them, and they've undoubtedly spotted you. If Xinling truly possesses such great abilities, they might strike before you get a chance to report this to Lord Xinling. Wu's continued. Being silent for such a long time, they are probably taking a gamble. This matter must not be disclosed to anyone. As for the giant egg, leave it for now. I'll inform Lord Xinling later. This time, you've earned credit in advance. This merit not only for Lord Xinling's faction, but when the plan unfolds, even Xinling will acknowledge his moves. Those who have been to the Three Kings Court are familiar with the giant egg. Xinling surely knew this. Jian Wushuang kept everything to himself. When the time comes, it will be revealed. If this matter leaks, the plan will likely face difficulties. At most, they'll capture one giant egg, and the biggest threat, Fuego, will remain elusive. The fact that the giant egg has been here for so long without hatching definitely has reasons. Even if it hatches, it's a captured bird in a jar, nothing to worry about. Jian Wushuang nodded. Initially frightened, he hadn't considered so much. Now, it seems this might not be a bad start after all. All right, let's set aside that matter for now. We need to create some illusions, like the origin source of all things. Wu's were revealed a sly smile. When Jian Wushuang and Wu's were arrived here, many people had seen them. It was necessary to release some information. The people in the Elder Palace portrayed an image of ostracizing Jian Wushuang. Unwilling to grant the origin source of all things to Jian Wushuang, his Dao companion was then taken away by the Hall Master of the Longevity Hall. In this way, Jian Wushuang could also be considered to have made a name for himself. That's how we'll handle it. Jian Wushuang stood up, exhaling a long breath. Now, there was only one way left. He had never expected that the plan proposed last time would lead to him being hastily sentenced by the Elder Palace. Wuxia, for the sake of caution, release more information recently, Jian Wushuang reminded as he spoke. No problem, Wuxia replied. By the way, one heard that Qingyou and Changfeng, one shut himself off completely, and the other went to the mining mountain. Without these two stumbling blocks, your escape this time should be smoother. Wuxia chuckled. The affairs of these two individuals were related to Jian Wushuang. They were avoiding him, leading to this last resort. Now, everything was proceeding according to plan. Jian Wushuang and Wuxia discussed many details, even setting the route for his escape. Prepared and resolute, he journeyed northward. The teleportation array to the borderlands was in the temple, an area strictly off-limits. After the cleansing of the northern forces by the Elder Palace, they were at their weakest, presenting an opportune moment for him to escape towards the north. He first used the teleportation array to reach the city of Sharuo, then proceeded northward relying on flight. If all went smoothly, he might even make a detour to the mines to search for Nieyuan. After a rough plan was set, he couldn't linger here any longer. Now, he needed to stage a departure performance. Otherwise, it might raise suspicions from outsiders. Before leaving, Wuxia stopped Rum. Jian Wushuang, take this, he said, handing over an embroidered box. Jian Wushuang was puzzled, but when he opened the box, he was stunned. What's this? Jian Wushuang wondered. This is the Abyss Flower. Wuxia nodded and said, consider this a gift from me. You've done me a great favor this time, and your performance in Beiwang Tower exceeded Xinling's expectations. Xinling has great praise for you. This gift was obtained by Wuxia through the collection of countless treasures in the Forest of Eternal Secrets, later exchanged with Zhu Yi. Don't underestimate this Abyss Flower. Its value was almost on par with half of a universal treasure. Jian Wushuang was equally shocked. Back on the original planet Alpha 9, he had seen this Abyss Flower, but back then, merely exchanging for its pollen was already extremely expensive. The crucial point was that back then they were trial participants, and even with plenty of godstones, they didn't have a chance to lay eyes on the Abyss Flower, let alone exchange for it, in the four great secret realms. The Abyss Flower. Jian Wushuang's eyes sparkled with excitement. Even if he had to give up the origin source of all things this time, it didn't seem like too much of a loss. Within the origin source of all things, terrifying life was stored, something that even he found fearsome. But that was a concern for later. After dealing with Xinling and Fuego, he could reconsider. By that time, he estimated that he would have successfully integrated the Daos and ascended to become the emperor. Once an emperor, his demand for the origin source of all things might not be as urgent as it was now. Leaving the main hall of the enforcement hall, Jian Wushuang soared into the air, heading directly to the island where the longevity hall was located. There were indeed things he needed to take care of, especially matters involving people. In the past, it didn't matter much. He had little fame, and it was challenging to challenge a veteran hallmaster. But things had changed. With his newfound fame, the three palace masters avoided him, and no one dared to offend him at this moment. If someone dared to provoke him too much, he could demand the origin source of all things, and let's see who would suffer more. Although he didn't have much feeling for Gong Miaoyi, she was someone he brought along. It was unacceptable for her to be silently taken away. This clearly violated the rules. Under the banner of righteousness, he intended to display his might. Longevity Hall, located in the northwest corner of Yuanyang Island. Unlike other islands, this place resembled more of a continent. Just a relative insignificance in the eyes of the mundane, Jian Wushuang, at a glance, appeared no more than a speck of dust. Boom! As he neared Longevity Hall, he directly erupted with a tremendous aura, causing the entire space to tremble. Although the distance was only a step away, Jian Wushuang insisted on tearing apart the space above Longevity Hall and leaping out from it. Below, disturbances were quickly noticed, and a Tier 6 emperor roared, soaring into the air. Who dares to be so bold? Don't you know this is Longevity Hall? The newcomer's hair was disheveled, and he had 4 arms. A majestic aura emanated from him. After seeing the newcomer clearly, Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, and his tone became more serious. El thought who it was. So it's His Highness Jian Wushuang. May I know the purpose of your visit to the Longevity Hall? Now, almost no powerful figure in the Elder Palace didn't recognize Jian Wushuang. Moreover, the other party was a Tier 6 emperor and also the deputy hall master of Longevity Hall. Although the surface was polite, there was inevitably some dissatisfaction in the depths of his heart. This guy is just a Tao lord. Back then, Emperor Jueyun probably faced a similar situation. Despite being strong, he ultimately didn't take that crucial step and advance in his cultivation realm. Now, many people were waiting to see him make a fool of himself. If the Tao merge failed, it would be a considerable loss of face. Although he wouldn't fall, there would be hidden dangers, and his cultivation would be stagnant for a lifetime. Seeing the newcomer, Jian Wushuang snorted coldly and said, "Summon Gong Miaoyi, and tell her it's her master who's calling for him." This statement was not wrong. After all, he was the one who brought Gong Miaoyi to the Elder Palace in the first place. In the Elder Palace, there was a rule that strong individuals could bring a few servants. Gong Miaoyi had entered as a servant initially. The deputy hall master of Longevity Hall's face immediately darkened. Now, Gong Miaoyi's status in a while would be that of their hall master's wife. Yet, Jian Wushuang referred to her as a servant. It was as if he were slapping their faces. Jian Wushuang, one know you're upset, but it's best not to cause trouble here. Otherwise, I'll take you down in one go. Deputy Hall Master Tiansong had a fiery temper. With Hall Master Tai San and the backing of Palace Master Chang Feng, no one dared to act recklessly here. Even if Jian Wushuang was incredibly talented, he only had the strength of a Tier 6 emperor now. Did he really consider himself the master of Qishan Temple? A hint of hostility suddenly emanated from Jian Wushuang's brow, and he angrily retorted, "Tiansong, are you trying to intimidate me?" A powerful aura radiated from him, a terrifying force of life. As this aura emerged, Tiansong sensed that something was wrong. Everyone had the force of life within them, but Jian Wushuang's was exceptionally terrifying. Tiansong felt that Jian Wushuang was not an individual but a large group of people standing before him. This was the terrifying aspect of life power. The overwhelming aura made even the Supreme Peak experts inferior to Jian Wushuang in terms of both aura and temperament. Humph! Pretending to be a master. Tiansong snorted. Although he had a hot temper, he wasn't a fool. As long as Jian Wushuang didn't make a move, he wouldn't dare to act first. If Jian Wushuang dared to make a move, he wouldn't interfere. He would seize the opportunity to beat Jian Wushuang and throw him out. Even if Wuxia came to question him later, he wouldn't be afraid. Tiansong's strength wasn't at the pinnacle among the Tier 6 emperors in the Elder Palace, but he was still a top-tier powerhouse. With Jian Wushuang's current strength, he could put up a fight. Winning was unlikely, and not getting beaten up would be considered good enough. But Jian Wushuang also had a trump card. With his formidable life power and the life universe formed by his one-thought universe, he could easily suppress his opponent. Pretending, after formulating his plan, Jian Wushuang prepared to take action and sneered, "Do you think I need to pretend?" Buzz. A profound aura filled the entire space. The continent where Longevity Hall was located trembled. Many people soared into the air, standing at a distance. It was almost time. If they really formed a group to deal with Jian Wushuang alone, not only would they lose face, but it was likely that Zhen Ling himself would come after them for revenge. Because bullying someone wasn't that simple. Swish! A cold radiance suddenly burst forth. The Jueyun sword emitted a thunderous roar, then surged abruptly. Eternal calamity. Jian Wushuang took the lead, slashing with a sword. The erupting power stunned everyone, even Tiansong. He exerted all his strength for this sword strike. It merged heart power, thought power, devouring, and the power of all things. It was his strongest sword strike to date. One sword could open the sky, sink the sea, destroy, and even have the power of creation. Over the years, despite the unrest in his mind, he had created quite a few masterpieces suitable for him. The Eternal Calamity sword technique was one of them. It was the pinnacle technique he had created by comprehending the power of Eternal Calamity. First sword move. Heavenly God. In this sword move, the calamities were contained because of his karmic killing calamity, which led him to this realization. As for the Heavenly God, it was a metaphor. A sword strike slaughtering the Heavenly God, breaking all calamities in the world. Facing this sword move, Tiansong didn't have much confidence. Although he held a high position, his cultivation was only in the pinnacle supreme technique. It was not that simple to obtain the secrets of the universe compared to someone like Jian Wushuang. For if Tiansong's arms reached out, intending to shake the sword strike, at this moment, Tiansong's body transformed into a golden hue, truly resembling a celestial being. Tiansong himself followed the divine body path. Thus he had a relatively weaker origin source. He had paid a tremendous price to forge his 4 arms into eternal treasures. The divine body had barely reached 59,000-fold. However, crossing the threshold of 60,000-fold was incredibly challenging. A 60,000-fold divine body reached the supreme peak level. Despite being only 1,000-fold short, the required treasures were comparable to those possessed by a supreme peak powerhouse. Even though Tiansong was a deputy hall master in the Longevity Hall, managing this place for 1,000,000 years, he still hadn't gathered enough treasures. The crucial point was that after reaching 59,999-fold, breaking through the 60,000-fold barrier became even more difficult. In the Elder Palace, he needed at least 1 epoch to gather enough treasures. This was already quite fast. In the past, without 10,000 epochs, it was impossible to gather those treasures. Boom! The 4 arms struggled to resist the onslaught of the first sword move of the Eternal Calamity sword technique. Jian Wushuang, dare you lay hands on this place? You better not regret it. Tiansong roared, simultaneously unleashing a powerful aura from his body. It was the peak-level supreme technique of the divine body path. Although it didn't amplify the divine body, it could continuously maintain his divine body in its peak state. This way, he wouldn't be afraid of being continuously depleted by an origin source powerhouse opponent. The consumption of divine body power was faster than the power consumed by the origin source. Break! Break for me! With another eruption, the first sword move of the Eternal Calamity shattered directly. Jian Wushuang's eye sockets contracted sharply, and then his figure disappeared on the spot. At the moment when the Eternal Calamity sword move broke, tens of thousands of fist shadows attacked. If he hadn't dodged quickly enough, he would have been seriously injured. The Tier 6 Emperor in the Elder Palace differed significantly from the indigenous emperors of the 4 great secret realms. If it were an external Tier 6 top-level emperor, he wouldn't need to be so cautious at all.